people get obsessed with killers or suspected killers all the time. But like this, I've never seen anything like it. I'm also covering the Luigi Mangione case. If he is guilty, it wasn't going to stop with Brian Thompson, CEO of a health insurance company that he wasn't even a client of. Where was he going? Who was going to be the next one? Why somebody with all that opportunity, if he really did do this, what would change? I mean, what was his last post? They couldn't believe it. This was like a complete 180 from the guy that they knew. You immediately saw like the support for him. It's the question, can you put aside everything that you've heard, that you will look at the evidence strictly and look at the testimony, base your decision purely on the facts and the law? Think about it. If you're a prosecutor, you want to win the big case. It helps your career. And so you had this case that was out in Virginia. 2022 Johnny Depp Amber Heard, fascinating case. I was shocked that he actually filed the lawsuit. As the trial was progressing, I saw exactly what was going on. He was phenomenal. He was incredibly believable on the stand. They didn't believe Johnny Depp abused Amber Heard in any way. Because what the jury basically said was, and it was a big win for Johnny Depp. That's a scary thing to think about. And I'll tell you this, Julian. I covered a case recently. It was a really disgusting case. Chinese national, multiple women, filmed all of it. Had tapes upon tapes upon tapes upon tapes. And that jury...
Hey guys, if you're not subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and hit that like button on the video. And if you don't have time to watch this episode right now, no problem, but I'd really appreciate it if you would save it to your watch later playlist. Finally, if you'd like to follow me on Instagram and X, those links are in my description below. Thank you. Jesse, thanks for coming in, man.
Thanks for having me. This is an awesome studio.
Thank you so much.
Is that the Great Gatsby?
That is
right?
Yeah.
How many people get that?
Not many.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
probably like 4 or 5 before I've gotten it. But
See, I'm legitimate, I guess.
yeah, we've been talking a little pop culture right here. You know your stuff.
Look at this. These are some of my favorite movies over here. And by the way, it was cool because before I came on, I was looking at the all the plethora of interviews you've done, and the guy that played Carlo in The Godfather.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome. That was awesome. That was a great interview.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, Johnny is he's a national treasure, man. He's
Yeah.
something else. He's like 84 or 85 too, and he just comes in here and goes, anyway, so let me start at the beginning. And it's just like in 3 hours, and you're like, huh?
Well, do you know how many times he's probably told that story?
A lot.
Exactly.
A
So
lot.
he's got to tell from the beginning.
Yeah,
But-
he actually got recognized in town right after this.
Really?
Like right away.
Ooh, that's interesting.
They're like, Johnny, is that you? I'm like, is this a setup?
Well, you got 2 seconds for an Al Pacino story?
Please, that's
Okay.
my favorite actor of all time.
So I go to a Polo Bar in the city, okay? A Polo Bar, for anybody who doesn't know, I would say it's probably the best restaurant in New York City. Food's great, but it's like, it's a who's who. You go there,
Yes.
it's a big thing. So I went with my brother and 2 friends, and we know one of the managers there, and she goes, listen, I'm going to sit you at a table. You have to promise me you will not look at this person. You will not try to talk to this person. You will not make any kind of eye contact with this person. I was like, okay, well, who is this? She goes, you have to promise, because last time he was here, there was an issue. I was like, okay. It's Al Pacino.
Really?
So Al Pacino. So they sit us at this table, and I immediately stare at him. So I broke the first rule. I mean, it's Al Pacino. What am I not going to look at?
Fucking Michael Corleone.
I'm watching everything he's doing. I'm like, what did he order? How did he order it? And he's dating a younger woman.
Yes.
And I'm like watching everything happens. And he's awesome. He's like the coolest guy. So a woman walks in with a dog. And by the way, just for everybody else, like, you can't go into Polo Bar with a dog unless there's like, I think the last time I saw somebody there was like Clive Davis, and you know who he is, right?
Yeah. I feel like Blake Lively could get away with it.
Well, we'll talk about that. But so she walks in with the dog, questionable, and she sits on the chair and falls backwards. So everybody rushes. Everybody's looking. Where do my eyes go? Al Pacino. I want to see what Al Pacino's reaction to this. And I promise you not, he's eating his chocolate cake, watching us. Just laughing at it. I'm like, it was awesome. He's a legend. He's a legend. So it was awesome to see.
Yeah, I've actually heard he's really cool too. So
Yeah.
that's interesting that request was made, because he's even the guy, who the hell was telling me this? But like, they'll do those bus tours out in LA.
I saw that.
The celebrity people come in and they take pictures on the bus. And like, he's the one guy that he'll be outside the house, like waving, like watering his lawn and shit.
He's a real movie star. There's a few and far between that are like that anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what? That guy, because his career almost didn't happen, because obviously Francis Ford Coppola had to keep him in The Godfather, like fighting tooth and nail just to get it done, because they wanted to fire him. But like,
Even before that, he did a movie. I don't know if you ever seen it, but it was called The Panic in Needle Park.
Mm-mm.
It was the first one he did, and it was the one right before The Godfather. That's why Coppola hired him. But like, he was incredible, man. Like his run in the 70s, starting with that, not even just starting with The Godfather. That was one of the greatest runs in the history of acting.
So I actually did acting. I went to the same acting school as Al Pacino.
You went to Strasbourg?
Yeah, I did. I went for a 1-year
No
conservatory
shit.
program, and he spoke there. So he spoke when I was a student there, and he was awesome. Like we were all asking questions and everything. And, you know, when you think about what he learned and how he became an actor and the techniques he uses, I don't think anybody realizes acting is one of the toughest things you can possibly do.
Yes, it
everybody
is.
thinks it's so simple. Being real, it's incredibly difficult, and particularly if you're playing characters who are not like you in any which way and trying to tap into that. It was, I went there to learn just how to perform on camera, you know, be comfortable in camera, learn how to present. That's how I, you know, got kind of my start. But when he came there and taught us a little bit more of his techniques, and he's such a talent,
What were some of the things he said he did? Because obviously he's a method actor, but
so people get a wrong impression about what method acting is. It doesn't mean you dress up like Abraham Lincoln, you walk and go to the sandwich bar and be like, oh, where's the steak sandwich? No, it's literally taking your life experiences, things that you've gone through, and through a series of techniques, replicating them for that scene.
Yep.
So if I'm playing a scene where, let's say, I'm breaking up with somebody, the easiest thing would be, have I had a situation in my life where I broke up with somebody or they broke up with me? And you go into that mindset. And how do you do that? You recreate that time in your life.
Yes.
Do you remember what you were drinking? Do you remember? Can you set the scenario? It's all mental. And some of it's easier said than done. But I tell you, it taught me one thing: not an actor. Definitely a host, not an actor. I did a few acting things. I was in one show with Russell Crowe.
That's like a flex.
That was cool. I was in a show called The Loudest Voice. I played a reporter, big stretch. And I was terrified because I've never done anything like that. And he comes in, he's playing Rupert Murdoch, the head of, no, I'm sorry. No, not Rupert Murdoch. Roger Ailes. He was playing Roger Ailes.
Yeah.
Full getup. You could barely recognize it's him. And we did this scene in it was like in a giant lobby of a office building, and it was when Fox News was announced. Now I'm one of a smarmy reporter who comes up and like, tell me a little bit more about what this Fox News is. I don't think it's gonna be really successful. So he does it. So I do it, and I'm on camera all the time. I'm not nervous. I was terrified.
Oh,
terrified.
It's Russell fucking Crowe.
So I start the line, and I'm like, Roger, like, he goes, can we stop? Mate, I need you to project a little louder. It's very cavernous in here. I'm like, yeah, sorry. And so then I do it again. I do it a few takes, and then I remember the extra next to me goes, how'd you get this? I don't know. But I auditioned and I got it, and it was awesome. And I got a chance to talk to him and meet him. He was a really cool guy.
It's a little cavernous in here.
It's a bit cavernous in here? Can you project a little louder? I was like, what are you? I was like, you know.
That's
Maximus is yelling at me on set. No, he was awesome. He was such a nice guy.
But you went to Strasbourg for how long?
I went for a year, 1-year conservatory program.
And you didn't think you were an actor at the end?
It wasn't for me. I loved presenting. I loved hosting. That was what my natural inclination was. I've done things like that. And I think it was great just to, first of all, one of the most important classes I ever took that's helped me a lot as an anchor and reporter is improv.
Oh, yeah.
Helps a ton. Improv class was fantastic. I also, just learning how to be on camera. That's not so easy. Not so easy just presenting and talking on camera and pretending like it's not there. So I think it was an incredible learning experience. I did it at one point in my life, and I thought it was really useful. And then, I was an attorney. And so I had a really different background to get to where I am now. But I think everything you do in life is a building block to something else.
So you did Strasbourg after getting your JD?
Yes. I went to law school.
Interesting.
I practiced law for several years, and then I, went to acting school, and I kind of transitioned into, television. And I had, not automatically, it took a little bit, but I had done hosting things before, I had done acting before, and basically the way I made a transition is I took two things I liked. Practicing law is really, really tough. It wasn't for me. I did it for several years. It wasn't the life that I wanted, but I was fascinated in the law. I did really well in law school. I was like, how do I translate that into something on TV and broadcasting. And the first thing that you have is people who come on and are legal experts for networks, right?
Yeah.
They do those hits. So I started doing 1 million of those, and I built up reps, made contacts, and then I got in touch with Dan Abrams, who was from ABC News, on Patrol Live back in the day, and he had started a network called Law News, and it was basically like court TV, doing live coverage several hours a day of live trials that were happening. Just started it out. I came in, auditioned, got a job as one of their hosts, and I did it. They then got an investment from A&E, became the Law and Crime Network, and I was hired full time, 5 days a week, 3 hours a day, straight live coverage. A lot of it's improv. I mean, a lot of it's not scripted. So
you're like the red zone of courts.
Exactly. That is a great point. We would come out and be like, all right, let's just talk about what the prosecution just did there. And we would do that for 3 hours a day. And then the company blew up. The company blew up. It did.
It's amazing.
It's incredible now. It has over almost 7 million subscribers, and I have a bunch of shows that I do for them. I don't do live coverage that much anymore. I do podcasts, Sidebar, a documentary show called Prime Crime, body cams, things like that. And the company has exploded, and it's all because of Dan.
Yeah, it's really that's what you go to. If you're on YouTube and you're looking for anything that's going on in court, you go there.
Yeah.
It's Law and Crime, 100% of the time.
I mean, it was crazy. It was Johnny Depp, Amber Heard. It was 2022. Johnny Depp, Amber Heard. That trial blew us up.
And you were in there, right?
I was in there for 6 weeks. I was in there for almost every day of testimony. And I remember this was when we knew something changed, because everybody was coming to us, which was incredible. Everybody was coming to our coverage of it. Our videos were getting 13 million views, insane numbers.
Do you think that's just because you guys had set the precedent of being on YouTube and putting so much native content up and already having the brand?
I think yes. And I think we had already established ourselves. But what also happened was we were getting out clips fast, and we were getting out commentary fast. And we had a different way we were presenting, and a different way we were, actually distributing it to the audience. And I think people really responded to that. And there was a video that we didn't plan this, and we actually used it a lot. The videos, we would take B-roll in the morning of the crowds, because people who were trying to come into that courtroom, you waited in 3 in the morning to try to get into the courtroom, because everybody needed a seat. And
how many seats are there?
There was only a limited amount, and it was first come, first serve. So we would have to wait online, or we'd have people who wait online. And I remember we took a camera view of everybody out there, and all of a sudden, one of the guys goes, "Law and Crime, Law and Crime. I've known about this trial because of you." And everybody just started jump, Law and Crime. Wow. And so we obviously clipped that, and it became really good for us. But it was Johnny Depp, Amber Heard that blew our company up. I mean, we took it to a whole other level, and we became, a name brand in the digital and online space, and YouTube as the premier place for all legal stories and crime stories.
If you own a handgun for self-defense, your storage likely fits into one of two frustrating categories. It's either locked away, safe, but out of reach in an emergency, or it's unsecured, leaving it vulnerable to anyone. Stopbox USA saw the problem and designed a groundbreaking solution: the Stopbox Pro. With the Stopbox Pro, you'll never have to choose between security and readiness again. Boom. This ingenious push-button locking system gives you fast and reliable access when every second matters, without the hassle of keys or reliance on batteries. It's 100% mechanical, so it works every time, no power needed. With Stopbox USA, you can finally have both security and readiness. Right now, our listeners are going to get 10% off their entire order when you use code Julian at checkout. And Stopbox is also giving you a buy one, get one free offer on their Stopbox Pro. That's 10% off and a free Stopbox Pro when you use code Julian at stopboxusa.com. That link is in the description below. I was actually just at the shooting range the other day with a bunch of friends, and there were stop boxes everywhere. It's so easy to use. You just put your fingers in the 1, 2, 3 position, push in, and it's open. So once again, for a limited time only, our listeners are getting a crazy deal. Not only do you get 10% off your entire order when you use code Julian at checkout at stopboxusa.com, but Stopbox is also giving you a buy one, get one free for their Stopbox Pro. That's 10% off and a free Stopbox Pro when you use code Julian at stopboxusa.com. Discover a better way to balance security and readiness with Stopbox. Was it you who was telling me that at the beginning, pre-trial stuff, you could get into the court easily, and then out of nowhere, the Johnny Depp thing? I would have thought that would have been packed from day one.
So not a lot of people knew about it. here's what happened. Johnny Depp, Amber Heard, they were in litigation for a while, and they even had litigation out in the UK, but nobody was really paying attention to it.
That's crazy.
And so you had this case that was out in Virginia, wasn't in California, wasn't in New York. It was in Virginia because he was suing her for a Washington Post op-ed piece that she had penned, basically saying she was a survivor of abuse. And the reason they sued in Virginia is because that's where the Washington Post had published it. And nobody really paid attention to it. So I go there. My company said, hey, we want to go report there for a little bit. I was like, sure. So I went, got into the courtroom. It's like 30 people. Nobody was there. And then what happened? Johnny Depp takes the stand. As soon as the word got down that Johnny Depp was about to take the stand, everybody flocked to that courtroom. I mean, it was, I don't think I can overstate. It was insane. It was insane. So many Johnny Depp supporters. Yeah, actually, can you pull something up?
Sure.
How do we pull something up on Instagram? Can we pull something up on Instagram?
Yeah, we can pull it up there.
If you go to my Instagram, I'll show you something. This is
What's your ad on? I don't think I have you on Instagram.
Oh, it's Real J Weber.
Real J Weber.
By the way, I did that before I actually got into media. I thought it was funny. Now it's just cringy. But anyway, I'm not gonna change it.
I like a good reel in front of the name. I think I got that on TikTok.
So,
all right, Real J Weber.
Real J Weber.
What video are we looking for?
Okay, you got to scroll down on Instagram. I'll show you. It's from 2022. This is worth it. I'm telling you. Okay.
How often do you post on here?
A little bit.
Oh, it's private. So we got to follow you.
Okay. Well, I'll
hit him with that follow.
All right.
This is a live Instagram accept of the follow.
This is good. This is just my way to get you as my follower.
That's right. Now you got to follow back.
I did.
All right. Good.
All right. It'll work.
Follow me on Instagram, by the way, everybody.
You got it.
Links in description.
So if you go all the way, go to, what is it? The posts, right? Posts.
Yeah. So we gotta have you, what's it called? Pin this post. Go all the way down.
Yeah.
All the way down.
Yeah.
We're going to 2022, you said?
Yeah, 2022. This is pictures too. Yeah, 2022. Bear with me. This is worth it. I'm telling you. This is worth it. Okay, keep going.
All right, we're going to pause for 1 second. Find this. We'll be right back.
Yeah.
All right, we're back.
Okay, so this was the first day a woman brought alpacas for Johnny Depp. Like, literally brought alpacas. She goes, I thought he'd be sad. These are my alpacas. I was like, what is going on? She goes, yeah, these are for him. And then it took off. People were coming in with T-shirts. The courtroom at one point when Amber Heard was testifying was filled with Johnny Depp supporters. There was very few Amber Heard supporters. And they were all snickering. They were all laughing. It was like a rock concert for them. Yeah. I mean, it was out of this world. And you saw like the amount of interest that people had in this case. And I think I will tell you what was very interesting about that situation was I think it was the importance of what we did, because a lot of people were taking clips, since it was a public trial and it was on camera, and they were splicing it. And they were splicing it to make it look like Amber Heard was worse than she was, or her lawyers were doing a bad job. And it was really, you talk about fake news or misinformation. It was the first time I actually was a part of it, because nobody knew that case at that time better than me. I knew every aspect of it. And yet they were like, look at this bad argument the lawyer was making. Look at how she was uncomfortable. And they were splicing it together like it was a movie to create a narrative that wasn't true. So when Law and Crime came forward and we tried to look, we knew where public sentiment was. It was mostly in favor of Johnny Depp, but we were like, let's tell it exactly like it is. These are her arguments. These are his arguments. We're going to be entirely down the middle. People respected that, but also I think it was necessary because you saw how much misinformation was happening.
So how did you see the case? Like just facts, just on the table, removing all the hubbub and bullshit that was going on. What do you think happened there?
So I was shocked that he actually filed a lawsuit. Because what's the worst thing that'll happen? You want your dirty laundry aired for the whole world to see?
It's like, your dirty shit on the bed.
Yeah. Well, there you go. And I was like, why would he do this? Well, if he really believes he can turn the narrative that he's not an abuser, that he was a victim, he goes on the stand, tells his story, the world sees it. How much is it really about the money at a trial? Not really. It's about getting his career back, getting his reputation back. And I didn't see that at the beginning. As the trial was progressing, I saw exactly what was going on. He was phenomenal on the stand. He was incredibly believable on the stand. He reversed this narrative that, in the introduction of videos and audio tapes where it seemed like she was constantly berating him and maybe hitting him. This was a much grayer story. Now, having said it, I was surprised by the jury's verdict, because what the jury basically said was they didn't believe Johnny Depp abused Amber Heard in any way. And what I mean that I'm not just talking about physical, emotional, mental, psychological, any which way. And this was a long trial where I think that through text messages and testimony, you could at least make the argument that when Amber Heard penned an op-ed piece where she talked about being a survivor of abuse, it didn't necessarily have to be a survivor of physical abuse. And yet the jury didn't believe it. They didn't believe that she was abused. And by the way, in a civil case, it's a lower standard. They didn't have to find that he
all you have
abused
to
her.
do is tip it.
Yeah, it's just, and they didn't believe it. And it was a big defeat for her side, and it was a big win for Johnny Depp. And I think it kind of reversed the narrative that, Me Too was such an important movement where finally things that were in the shadows were finally coming to light, and so important. I also was at the Harvey Weinstein trial. I mean, you talk to me, I think the evidence against him,
we shall come back to that.
Yeah. So it was an important movement, but it also doesn't mean, and I think it's interesting with what's happening with Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, it doesn't necessarily mean that the person who comes forward can A, prove their case, or B, it happened.
That's right.
It's always, you have to look at the evidence, you have to look what's being presented, and it also has to be the credibility of the people who are making these claims. So it was a big tipping point, and I like to believe that the jury, because they also, the jury didn't just side with Johnny Depp. I mean, yes, he won, but they also found that he had defamed her at one instance. So this was a careful jury. This was a jury that deliberated, looked at the evidence. They didn't seem to me swayed by public opinion, and thank goodness, because there was a lot of public opinion out there, and that's the kind of jury that you want. Easier said than done, but you got to give them. Your hat goes off to that jury.
How do you in today's modern time? How do you separate those two? Because everyone's got an iPhone, everyone's got access to the internet. Like, unless you are living under a rock, you've seen something. And yet these juries are supposed to be totally unbiased. They don't even know who this is or what's going on. Like, how do you even create a fair trial the way that they intended it in the Constitution now?
So the world's changed. It's not about, do you know Sean Combs? Because that trial's coming up. It's not about, do you know Donald Trump? Because his trial happened. It's not, do you know Blake Lively or Justin Baldoni? Have you heard about what happened? You expect they're going to know what happened. Yeah. Brian Koberger, you expect the people are going to know what the case is about. It's the question, can you put aside everything that you've heard? Can you have a fresh slate? Can you promise this court, can you promise the defendant that you will look at the evidence strictly and look at the testimony and base your decision purely on the facts and the law? And you have to trust them. Our jury system's not perfect. Our legal system's not perfect, but it's pretty great. And it's served us well for many, many years. And I would say there's a system in place. It's called voir dire. It's a jury selection process.
Voir dire.
Yeah, voir dire.
Voir dire. You're in New Jersey. That's how we pronounce it.
Voir dire. Did you have a New Jersey lawyer in here? I feel like they would have been like, it's yeah.
Yeah, it's called My Cousin Vinny.
There you go. Two Utes. And so, no, it was interesting. So you have to basically, there are questions you ask these prospective jurors. You do research on them. You look at their social media profiles. You can strike jurors. Each side's given a number of strikes where they can just strike them for whatever reason they want. And that through that process, obviously it's strategic. You try to get a jury that you think is going to be on your side. The prosecution wants somebody, the defense wants somebody, a plaintiff wants somebody, a defendant wants somebody. And it's, again, not a perfect process, but you have to monitor what the jurors do. If the jurors have a conversation with somebody, if the jurors post something on social media, they're big law firms. They're watching these jurors like a hawk constantly. So you have to make sure.
Yeah, because then if they, God forbid, like during the trial, once they're on there, if they do anything, I mean, you can get them off immediately if they make even one comment.
Or it's a mistrial. It's a mistrial. If especially if they already rendered a conviction. If they rendered a guilty verdict, that could be thrown out if there was really juror misconduct, or they lied on the jury questionnaire. Here's the thing. So, look, I'm also covering the Luigi Mangione case, right?
Is there anything you're not covering?
No, it's everything. We're law on crime. That's what we do. But no, Luigi Mangione, I was asked about this the other day. Like, I haven't seen a case that polarizing on a criminal level quite some time, and not even at the point like, did he do it or not do it? It's like, did he do it? But like, he's justified in what he did.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But to get a jury there, like, there is a question, will there try to be stealth jurors, people who want to get on that jury to render a verdict one way or another? That is a legitimate concern. And changing the venue, like getting it out of Manhattan, it's not going to solve the problem. It's about health insurance. That affects everybody. Yeah. So it's a tough issue.
You know, and it makes me really sad looking at a case like that, because it's another piece of evidence that we are really struggling as a society to hold multiple thoughts at the same time. You can hold the thought that the health insurance industry is fucked up. The laws around it are fucked up. Some of the people in it are fucked up. Some of the other people in it are incentivized to be fucked up because they got to report a quarterly earning every 3 months, and it's people's lives they're playing with. And it's all fucked up, and no one's arguing with that. But at the same time, the idea that in America, where we do live under laws, you could just have someone go out and pick one employee, you know, in this case, the CEO, and fucking shoot him in the middle of a public street in the biggest city in the world. That we can't do that. I understand that people are angry at the industry, but we have to be above that, in my opinion.
I think you have 100% the right opinion. And by the way, a couple of things about that. Health insurance has ruined people's lives. It's ruined their own individual lives. It's ruined families' lives. It's ruined people they know, their friends. There's no doubt about it. There's a problem. There's a problem. I think we can all agree.
Yes.
But it doesn't stop at the health insurance industry. So if we take the point, something needed to be done. There needed to be a wake-up call. Okay, I'm not saying what he did was right or wrong, but I think it's important, and I think it's, we have to listen. Where does that end? Politics, entertainment, finance, anybody who's affected anybody's life in a major way. This is the answer. It's very scary. And by the way, I feel confident to say that if Luigi Mangione did do this, if he is guilty, it wasn't going to stop with Brian Thompson. Where was he going before he was apprehended? You think that it was just Brian Thompson, the CEO of a health insurance company that he wasn't even a client of? You think that was going to be where it was going to end? Brian Thompson, look, he knew where he was. Again, taking the allegations is true. He's innocent until proven guilty, but he knew where he was going to be. He was going to an annual investors conference. Yep. Easy target. Who was going to be the next one? If this really was a wake-up call or trying to take it to the man, I don't believe it was going to end in Brian Thompson. That's a scary thing to think about. And I'll tell you this, Julian. When there was that manhunt for a week, we didn't know who it was, what was going to go on. I said, you immediately saw like the support for him. Like they didn't even know who he was. Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is great. I thought people might know who he is, see him in public, and be like, turn the other way. I don't want him to get caught. I thought that might happen. I thought that was a legitimate concern. So again, hats off to the people in Altoona, Pennsylvania, and that McDonald's who actually alerted authorities and stepped in, because if they didn't, would he have been apprehended? I mean, look, taking the allegations as true, the fact that the suspect removed the mask and you saw him smiling at the girl in the hostel.
Hey, he's got a spit game.
Yeah, listen, that's probably his undoing. That's probably what let him in.
Yeah, and it's actually one of those things where when you look into his backstory and what happened, because I do always try to understand, what gets a person there. You don't have to have empathy for the act, but how did the person become the guy who was going to do that? And when you see this kid who was like this all-American kid, extremely smart, obviously, like he had a privileged life, but he took advantage of every single thing that was put in front of him in like a positive way, and had his whole life in front of him. At some point he gets this back injury when he's surfing, and you can see it on his social media when you go through his Twitter, which is that even up anymore?
It's up.
And Pep Mangione's still up?
It's up. Take a look. He's got a lot of followers, and which is interesting because I think the last thing he posted was obviously before the Brian Thompson killing, and it's like he was a normal guy, like posting about random stuff, and it wasn't like from what I read, you couldn't see somebody that looked indoctrinated. I mean, the why of this is still confusing. Why somebody with all that opportunity, if he really did do this, what would change? I mean, what was his last post?
Go down a little bit. That's the pin post. Thanks, Pat. Yeah, it was like a retweet of Huberman.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
But if you look through them all, like, yes, there's a lot of intellectual interests and health hack interests that you'll see. But when you start looking through some of putting them all together, and I have it in a little while now. I looked at this back like when he was arrested. You can see the image of someone who had, in my opinion, retreated from society, had some sort of bone to pick, and was too smart for his own good, because he was a brilliant kid for sure. And I think like he kind of, I mean, I don't know what was, I'm not a doctor. I don't know what was going on in his head, but something happened there that involved him just severely overthinking and getting into some sort of psychic state in that way. And when you hear from his friends and his family, like he had totally retreated from them over the past 6-7 months, I want to say, leading up to this.
So we launched a brand new podcast. It's called Luigi. It's on through Wondery
What
Plus.
a name.
I mean, of course. And we interviewed like people he knew, he grew up with, people he was hanging out with in Hawaii, and like, you know, some of them might have seen a change, but some of them were just so shocked.
Really?
Like shocked. When it came out that he was the suspect, they couldn't believe it. This was like a complete 180 from the guy that they knew. And I have to imagine it is an incredibly difficult time for his family trying to make sense of all this. But my gosh, hopefully between now and whenever his first trial is, because he's facing, you know, 3 different jurisdictions, 3 charges in different jurisdictions. Yeah. Pennsylvania, New York State, and then federal charges, although he hasn't been federally indicted yet. But yeah, whenever that trial happens between now and then, hopefully we get more answers. I mean, those writings, the manifesto, even though his defense attorneys don't want to call it that, it gives you a little bit of a glimpse, but I don't know. I mean, it's funny. You say it is, right? You know what his defense team is saying? It's not a manifesto. Don't call it a manifesto. You know why it's not a manifesto? He didn't release it. The suspect has to release it in order for it to be a manifesto. What happens if you get caught before it's released? I mean, is it not a manifesto? They don't want to do it. They say it's tainting the jury pool and all that. But actually, it's an interesting argument. They say, real quick, I won't digress, but they basically, in order to get it's murder for terrorism. That's how they're getting first and second degree murder in New York. That's how they're getting life in prison. And it has to be murder in furtherance of terrorism. In order to prove that, you have to say it was a murder committed to influence a unit of government or intimidate or basically instill fear in a population. And the defense's argument is, government, you're deliberately putting those writings out there, calling it a manifesto. You're creating this sensation in order to justify your charge. Because I actually believe from a legal point of view, it is a stretch to say it's terrorism. I don't think it quite fits. I think it's easily second-degree intentional murder. I think they'll probably get him on that. But to say it's terrorism, I don't quite see it. But I think it was an interesting argument they made.
Prices over the last few years have been and continue to be high, and most people unfortunately have to reach for credit cards to cover bills. Credit card debt has reached an all-time high, and it's trapping Americans. But luckily, American Financing can help homeowners pay off high-interest debt by using their home's equity. American Financing is a family-owned mortgage lender that's been around for 25 years. And yes, they're licensed in all 50 states. Their mortgage consultants are salary-based, so there's no incentive for them to put you in a loan that doesn't make sense for you. Furthermore, their customers save an average of $800 a month, and American Financing doesn't charge any upfront or hidden fees to find out how much you can save later. You may be able to close in as fast as 10 days. And on top of that, you may be able to delay up to 2 mortgage payments, creating more savings up front. American Financing has helped hundreds of thousands of homeowners create meaningful savings, and it's reflected in their reviews on Google. So make sure you call today at 888-991-9788. That's 888-991-9788 or AmericanFinancing.net/Dorey. That link is in the description below. American Financing, NMLS 182334. Yeah, terrorism's like this word we throw around, but the actual legal definition is pretty complicated, no?
It depends upon the statute. This one is, if you're going to commit a murder that is designed to influence a unit of government or intimidate a civilian population, which would make sense for a classic example. If somebody goes out, has a suicide vest on, blows it up, right, and in the name of some cause abroad, clearly fits the definition. Here, what was he really trying to do? I mean, taking the allegations is true. What change was he trying to make? How was he trying to influence government? He wasn't going after other people in the population. If you look at the video, There was a woman, a bystander, who watched him gun down, or excuse me, allegedly watched him gun down Brian Thompson. I'm a lawyer, I gotta say, allegedly watched him gun down Brian. She ran away. He didn't that suspect did not target any civilian person. He wasn't trying to instill fear. Now you can make the argument. CEOs of other companies are part of a civilian population. Was he trying to scare them? You see what I'm saying? It's a little bit of a stretch. It's not clear on its face, and I'm sure prosecutors are going to have to expand upon it leading up to trial.
Yeah, and his family's not supporting him at all in this, right? Like they're not do we know anything about that?
I don't know, like outwardly. I mean, he is getting a lot of financial support from the fund. I think the family has been rather quiet, and understandably so, but I don't know how much they helping him in his legal case.
Can't imagine being in that position.
How do you even process it? And by the way, I don't know the last time they spoke to him. Like, did they know what he was up to, where he was, what was going on? What was that relationship like? How much is that going to be teased out at a trial? I don't know. Are they going to have a, sit down for an interview? Probably not. But that relationship between him and his family and understanding what did they know about him? What was he up to? How did he make his way to New York? Where did he get a ghost gun? Again, taking the allegations as true. These are questions that are still up in the air, and we don't have a clear answer.
Yeah, what was the story with the gun again?
It was a ghost gun. It was like a 3D manufactured gun. And by the way, so it was interesting, like if you think from a defense perspective, he's apprehended in Altoona, Pennsylvania, and he has this weapon on him, and they're able to match the ballistics to the crime scene. You have the surveillance footage, right? You have fake IDs that match the hostel where he was staying. This is relatively a straightforward case for prosecutors. Now, recently, his defense team has said, "What's the best way that you get a case thrown out? You say the evidence was improperly collected, right? Imagine none of this evidence comes in." So they basically said his rights were violated in that McDonald's. Police cornered him. They didn't properly read him his Miranda rights. They broke protocol. All of it should be tossed. I think it's an uphill argument. Probably not going to work. But that's the first thing they're trying to do to help his legal case.
What about the Dark Knight Rises, like perp walk they made him do? Was that a part of the case to throw it out?
Good reference. He and Diddy now in the same MDC. It's like Arkham Asylum, right? Isn't it? Look, I think people can criticize that. It was unique. You don't see it often. Then again, I think the Mayor Eric Adams was trying to make a statement. This is a crime that we don't really see ever in Midtown Manhattan. Yes, there are shootings, obviously, but nothing like that. I've been, by the way, that street 300 times in my life. I've been on that street.
Yeah.
Because I used to park my car right there, so I know exactly where it is. Stuff like that doesn't happen. When you see the public fervor for him, I think the government has to take a strong position to make sure there's no other copycats. They're sending a message.
I understand that.
But the problem is like that could influence a jury. It can embolden other people. It's something they have to think about. Every optics are very important here.
Yeah, that's a great word for it. It's
Yeah.
all about the optics. It was kind of crazy though, because my buddy Joe Deef and his writing partner Matt Ferrara wrote this script for this play called Sacco and Vanzetti, based on that case. It's called Sacco and Vanzetti Are Dead. And so I think Luigi was caught on a Monday. The Saturday before, me and my buddy John went in to see their first table read of it. And it's like this ridiculous, over the top, like comedy play and so they had the whole cast in there, like doing a private table read. And one of the jokes is that they were blaming the assassin on this crazy lone gunman named Luigi.
Oh,
and they
yeah.
just wrote this into the script.
Oh, wow.
And then on Monday it comes out and they're this is the greatest marketing opportunity of our life.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. But did you see that thing, like when he was first arrested? It was like at a nightclub. Somebody put up his picture on the DJ booth screen and everybody in the club went nuts. They were like, yeah. I was like, I've never seen it. People get obsessed with killers or suspected killers all the time. It's not new. But like this, I've never seen anything like it.
If his name weren't fun to say, Luigi Mangione is a very fun name to say. And if he weren't like a young, good-looking dude, would it be this big?
Probably not.
Right?
Probably not. I mean, let's call it what it is. He has become, I think people who believe what he did is right and I'm not saying that's everybody who supports him, but people who believe what he did is right or understandable, there would probably be some of that, like, oh, he's sending a message. I kind of emphasize, but the fact that he's young and, good looking, it helps. And it also will help in a jury. It also help. It's going to, optics matter. I say it again. The way you look matters, especially in a courtroom. It's a big consideration. Absolutely.
So he could technically be sitting at the table while shit's going on the witness stand and just be winking at some, middle-aged juror, and that lady's going to vote for him.
If he gets caught doing that, he's in a lot of trouble. But no, he I had a conversation about this recently with an FBI profiler. I'm saying this. This is what she said. I asked her the question. I said, do you think he's deliberately chiseling his jaw, looking at the camera? You ever see that when he's like in court? He's like looking around, like he's playing up a little bit. She goes, absolutely, 100% he is. I don't know. That was her opinion, but he knows what's going on. He gets it. I've never seen so much conversation about loafers before in my life because he wears loafers and the green sweater.
They gave him an eyebrow job in prison too.
I saw that. Look, it matters, and jurors are human beings. Look, the big concern, we call it in the law, jury nullification. It's when a jury comes in and they don't decide a case based on the facts of the law; they base it on emotion. That's a real consideration. You're not allowed to do that as a defense attorney. You're not allowed to do that, like appeal to the juror's emotion, say you should put aside the facts in the law and find him not guilty because of that. But it's implicit, and you wonder if that's something that could happen.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see it play out because also, like you said, it's in there's like three different jurisdictions with this.
Yes.
You have New York State, so that's one case. The federal case is also in Southern District of New York.
Yep.
And then the case in Pennsylvania, is that just like evidence tampering and illegal gun carrying?
It's forgery charges, presenting fake ID to police, weapons possession charges. It's obviously the less serious case when you're dealing with federal murder charges that carry potentially the death penalty and state murder charges that carry potentially life in prison.
Now, let's play a hypothetical here because I don't know. I mean, I guess because judges are human beings too, it does vary judge to judge. But hypothetically, let's say shit goes down. He gets found not guilty of the serious charges in New York and the federal court, but goes to Pennsylvania on the forgery charges and the gun charge and whatever. I don't know what the sentencing guidelines would be. But, let's say it's something that the normal person, if they were found guilty on that, and in this hypothetical scenario, let's say they'd get 3 years or 2 years or something. Do you think a judge would use their own judgment to say, fuck it, I'm giving him 20 years because I think he did this shit?
I mean, for those charges that he's facing, I don't remember off the top of my head what the maximum is. They would have to be the judge would base the decision based on the arguments from the prosecutor and the defense attorney. Now, they could go past it. They could say, I've listened to arguments and I think it actually should go beyond what the minimum is or what the maximum is. But that'll be appealed because, again, you have to look strictly at what those charges are, right? And, yeah, that's a consideration, but I don't think necessarily that would happen.
Okay.
It's interesting. I mean, look what O.J. Simpson, right? O.J. Simpson found not guilty. And then O.J. gets convicted of that whole Las Vegas stealing the memorabilia. And he got, 7 years? I mean,
it's like 8 years, 8.5.
Yeah, I mean, look, there were people who were like, he got convicted because, well, I think I don't remember that case that well, but I remember there was a conversation of how much was it based on the evidence in that case versus this is a second shot at trying to hold him accountable for what he allegedly did.
Again, because we have this system set up that's supposed to be like the system and by the book, and we do this and then that and this and then that. And I know in law school, like every lawyer I talk to, they train you to be objective. But there's still, it doesn't matter how objective you get, we're all still human beings, and there are still little things like, forget the jurors, I'm talking about the people, the judges and the lawyers. There are still things that creep into every single case, some more than others, and that can change the facts of the case.
Hey, by the way, I mean, this is why we have a system in place where there's a trial court, there's an appellate court, there's a Supreme Court, right? Or here in New York, we call it or New York, we call it the Court of Appeals. But basically, there's a lot of conversation right now about the courts at a political level, right? Should a judge have this much power? This system works. Now, you don't have to agree with the judge's decision, but you can make arguments to have it overturned. Yes, they make mistakes. Yes, there could be an issue of a conflict of interest. Yes, there could be an issue of a bias, but that is why you have another court review it and then another court above that review it. It's again, not a perfect system, but it works, and it works for a reason. It's checks and balances. And I get look, I'm an attorney. I get very scared about the idea of attacking the justice system. Doesn't mean you can't attack the arguments. Doesn't mean you can't criticize the courts for decisions. You should. But to attack our framework is a concern that I have, because it works both ways. It works both ways.
No, I agree with you, and I always make sure I say this. I think we have the greatest legal system in the world. I think it's pretty incredible how we set up. Just like anything, I'd always want to improve things where we can, right? So where you see things where they go astray, when you see, like, I'm passionate about cases where people get convicted of stuff on horrible evidence, prosecutorial misconduct, and they get thrown away for the rest of their life and stuff like that.
Happens.
Where you see things like that, you want to go in and say, okay, why did this happen? How can we try to prevent that happening or have it happen a lot less in the future? And I think that's fine. But when you start to take those cases and say, therefore, we should burn the whole system down, that's a bad idea. That's a really bad idea.
It's the police officer argument, right? There are bad apples, but it doesn't mean that you get rid of all police departments.
That's absolutely right.
It doesn't work that way. There's corruption at every level of government. There's corruption in every kind of industry. They're bad actors. They're bad people. It happens. But hopefully the system roots itself out and you can check those people and root it out. Look, and I think the beauty of our system is you are innocent until proven guilty. You put the prosecution on their toes. Prove that my client is guilty. Do you have the goods, or is there a sloppy investigation? Is what you're presenting not amount to the crime that you're charging the person with? That's a big standard. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt. If people really break it down, proof beyond a reasonable doubt. It's a very, very high standard. Look, there's a lot of responsibility we give jurors for that. It's not an easy task, particularly with the subject matter. I mean, let me tell you something. We're talking a lot about Diddy, right? Combs, okay? People, oh my gosh, what's this trial going to be like? The celebrities. Think about the jury. Think about if the videos are true. They have videos of these freak-offs, these sex acts, these allegedly illegal sex acts.
And they got to see it.
They have to see it. Now, I covered a case recently. It was a really disgusting case. It was actually out in the UK. Chinese national raped multiple women, filmed all of it, had tapes upon tapes upon tapes upon tapes. And that jury had to watch it and they had to be excused. They're like, I need a break. I need a break. Remember what they have to go through and see. It's the worst of the worst.
It ain't a movie.
It's not a movie. It's not a movie. Now, especially with a murder case, dealing cases with children, which unfortunately I deal with a lot. I mean, those are the worst cases. And it's not easy sitting on that jury and trying to not be influenced by what they're viewing, right? I mean, you see somebody being victimized on a tape. I want justice, but is it going to be Sean Combs that deserves to be found guilty, or is there more to the story here? You have to be very clear about what you're arguing, and that's the trick for prosecutors.
How do you do that job when you're defending the people like that, and you have the videos?
Because you have everybody's entitled to a defense. That's your job. They're entitled to a vigorous defense, okay? And you make the argument, what they're making in the Sean Combs cases. If he engaged in, we're not even running away from the term freak-offs. We'll call them freak-offs. He had commercial sex workers, sure. He had threesomes. It's not illegal. It was all consensual. And it's interesting because the Sean Combs case, after the release of that video of him beating Cassandra Ventura in a 26,
horrible.
You would say, throw him away, lock the cuffs up,
right.
He's guilty. But when you look at actually sex trafficking and what that means, right? So it's the idea of harboring somebody, transporting somebody, enticing somebody to commit commercial sex acts for something of value, using force, fraud, or coercion. Is that really what's going on? Or did he have a bunch of girlfriends and intimate partners that he traveled around, had group sex with, paid for things? Is that sex trafficking? Well, it is if it's not consensual. And It's a really thin line.
Right.
Because the classic sex trafficking case is somebody who kidnaps a bunch of people, right? Puts them on a boat to pimp out to, wealthy individuals, something like that. This is a different kind of case, and we're seeing it with the Alexander brothers in New York, these high-powered real estate, private security brothers. We're seeing it with...
Wait, I don't know about that.
Oh, you don't know about the Alexander brothers?
Yeah, what's going on there?
The Alexander brothers, this happened a few months ago. They're facing federal and state charges. These guys were like the top of real estate in New York and Miami, and also they had a private security firm, very wealthy, very well known, very well connected. They have been accused of sexually abusing and sex trafficking women for years, since high school, that they even joked about like gang raping girls in high school.
Yeah, real quick, Pat, can you just mark down this spot as like we got to watch for some of the language? Keep going, though. Yeah.
And it's a really, really disturbing case, but it goes back to the question, is it sex trafficking? If they were drugging these women and abusing them, okay, you have a stronger case, but does it fit within the definition? And that's something that defense attorneys are really going to be honing in on. So when this trial happens for Sean Combs in May, or when their trial happens, whenever it will happen, those definitions are going to be very key to say this is not a classic example of sex trafficking or racketeering like a criminal enterprise. The prosecution, the government's going too far. They're going too far here. They're saying, Sean Combs operating a criminal enterprise. Really? How? Show me. And it's going to be an interesting narrative. Two different narratives put forward.
Hey guys, if you haven't already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. It's a huge, huge help. Thank you.
I don't know, 10,000 fucking buckets of baby oil.
Hey,
that doesn't help prove a criminal fucking conspiracy. I mean, Jesus Christ.
They remember what his attorney said when now he's not going to make this argument, but you know what he said.
Costco.
Yeah, he went to Costco. He went to Costco. Yeah, maybe he bought in bulk. Look, they're going to say Sean Combs is a weird guy. His sexual proclivities are very different from you and me, but it doesn't make it a crime. And it's interesting because I follow the back and forth of this. They're trying to get evidence thrown out of this case, significant evidence. And they say the reason the evidence should be thrown out is because the applications to get search warrants for his houses, what he had on his person, his electronic devices, they were defective. Why are they defective? Because prosecution, you didn't put in evidence, text messages between him and these alleged victims that show everything was consensual. That's their argument. We don't know. A lot of it's redacted, so we don't know what the conversations are. But they're like, if the judge would have seen this, that there was more to the story, then you wouldn't have granted these search warrants and none of this evidence should have come in. I don't think it's going to be much successful, but that's going to be the argument. Everything was consensual. Everything's on the up and up. People are just coming after him out of the woodwork for whatever reason. They're fabricating it. They have a financial incentive to go after him. But their argument is nobody's telling the truth.
Well, the one thing I keep thinking while you're going through this is that it's almost like it's being made in either or. Why is it not both? The guy had a lot of sex. I'm sure he had legal sex. I'm sure he had consensual sex. Yeah. But why? It also appears to me like he did a lot that was possibly at the least not consensual and did involve like sex trafficking. It's like, let's say for a second he were a part of a blackmail operation. Okay, we've seen this before. And I don't know that he was, but it certainly looks like there could have been something like that because this is something that's very easy to blackmail people. All you had to do was be around the guy, and now your name is sullied forever. You may have been there. Let's say he throws, just use round numbers, 50 parties a year. You may have been at 40 parties, and those might be the 40 where everything was consensual. But what about those 10 where there weren't? And you weren't there, but no one knows which those 10 are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if it's a mix, like why does the judge have to assume it was everything or nothing?
It's called reasonable doubt. They're trying to muddy any of the waters. They're trying, I think, and by the way, when you file a case like this where you have 4 victims, right, 4 alleged victims, if the defense can strike at the credibility of one victim, it taints the credibility of the others. So in a way, the prosecution is doing what they can to secure a strong conviction against Sean Combs, make sure, he never gets out of prison again. You have as many victims as you possibly can to testify to. I mean, just recently they filed another indictment, adding 2 more charges with respect to another alleged victim. And you want that. It strengthens your case. But on the other hand, if there's one little weakness in your case with one victim, then that can weaken the rest of your case. And that's a big problem for the prosecution. So I believe, fair argument, I believe that the victim 1 in this case is Cassandra Ventura. And if you start with her and you start with her account, remember she was the first person who sued Sean Combs back in November of 2023, started this whole thing, harrowing account. Her description of getting beat up by Sean Combs was identical to the video that was released months later by CNN. So if you didn't believe her accounts, you're like, oh, this seems me. When that video came out, you're like, I believe everything she's saying. That's what I think a fair argument is. And they've been trying to get that video out. But you know what their argument is to that, which I think is going to be a key piece of evidence? Domestic spat. unfortunate incident, really unfortunate incident, but it was not evidence,
Unfortunate.
not evidence of sex trafficking. Although the prosecution says, where was she running away from in that hotel? She says she was running away from a sex worker that was in that room. And remember, Sean Combs looks like on that video running out in a towel. Why is he in a towel? I think that video may make or break the case, at least with respect to her.
Too.
So it's really important. And by the way, we don't know what else is out there, right? They have other digital evidence videos. If that's one part, what else do these videos show?
Yeah, didn't his lawyer step down too?
One of them.
And that was his wife is Luigi's lawyer.
No. So he's still represented by Mark Agnifilo.
Okay.
But there was another lawyer that stepped down. But he's got a really strong legal team. And that's right. Mark Agnifilo's wife is representing Mangione. So the Agnifilos have two very, very big clients in the same courtroom. But look, and the problem with the federal cases, the Sean Combs case, there's no cameras. So we won't see what happens. We'll get reporting back.
That's right.
Transcripts,
In court, yeah.
transcripts, but it's going to be different. We won't have the actual testimony.
When are they going to change that rule?
It's a problem. You're talking to a guy who believes all in transparency. I think there should be cameras in the Supreme Court, but look, they have the rules. They are concerned about. I've heard the arguments. The arguments are you have cameras. It could affect the trial. It could affect the jury.
But you do it in state trials.
I know. It could affect the way judges and attorneys perform. They have rules about it. I don't agree. I think it's a real problem. I'm all about transparency. I think it's important for our country to know how our justice system
100%.
works, particularly in a high-profile case like this.
100%. And so many of the biggest cases are in federal court.
Yeah.
And it's also like, we talk about trying to improve the legal system and stuff. Listen, when people do shit wrong, there should be punishment for that, and that's what it should be. Are you drinking a Saratoga water right now?
So I
You
am.
son of a bitch.
By the way,
God,
I've been drinking this. I've been drinking this before that guy did the challenge. I don't even know what the guy's. I was drinking this for the last year. Do you know why? Because they said like all those plastics have those microplastics, whatever. So I've been drinking this, and then all of a sudden Saratoga went on the map because the guy does the challenge. I don't know. But yeah, it's delicious. It's phenomenal.
Oh my God.
Glass all day, every day.
Oh, I thought that was I thought they might have paid you to do that.
No. They should, but no. Yeah.
All right. Anyway, though, what I was saying with the federal system, these cases are often like the biggest cases we have. And when I was saying about improving the system, when I see that our conviction rate in the federal courts is, I believe it's between 97 and 98%. That I think the lack of transparency is a huge part of that problem because there's no way it's that high. Like I could see it being 90-10, right? I could see 90% of the people coming in there being mostly guilty or at least somewhat guilty of the things they're accused of. But like 97, 98?
So I'll counter that by saying the feds don't go after everybody. When they do,
I know.
When they do, they will put all their resources into it. They go after the big fish with the strongest evidence. They won't just pull the trigger on a case unless they really feel they have the goods. That's why it took a long time for there even to be charges against Sean Combs. And so they have to feel fairly confident. Now, it doesn't mean that there's not guilty verdicts. It doesn't mean that they don't have weak cases. But when the feds go after you, it's very different than state charges. There's more limited avenues on to charge for a federal crime. And they are quite experienced prosecutors. The Southern District of New York that's prosecuting Sean Combs is no joke.
Oh, I know. I'm very, very familiar. So part of the problem is, though, again, there's you don't want to paint the whole, I guess, barrel of apples as like one or two bad ones, right?
Yeah.
But that does exist too.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example that's personal with me with this. Raj Rajaratnam. You remember that case?
Sort of. Maybe.
So he was the first hedge fund guy found guilty of insider trading. Friend of mine. I had him on the show. I followed that case when I was in high school, which means I followed it in the media. Because I was interested in like Wall Street and how that shit worked and whatever. I thought he was guilty as sin. So when he first got introduced to me, like this is over 3 years ago now, we were talking about bringing him on the podcast, which we ended up doing for episode 87. I told him, I said, yeah, I thought you were guilty as hell. He's like, no problem. We'll come talk about it. Yeah. And so I actually spent like a month going through that case and going through some of the legal documents and how it went down and everything. And I had my dad look at it too, who's an attorney. He's not a criminal attorney, but he's a civil litigator. And we're looking at it like, holy shit, like it's not a popular stance to take. Like billionaire hedge fund guy might be innocent, but we don't think he did this. Like, could there have been some spots where he was careless? Absolutely, for sure. Could there have been some spots where he was a little naive? Yes. but like don't think he did it. And part of the reason was because when you actually look at the evidence that the feds presented, the case was rigged against him from the start, including the fact that all of their evidence was not supposed to be admissible in court. They got all of their wiretaps illegally. The judge admitted it in a Franks hearing out loud, which is a pretrial hearing, as you know, which should mean you then say, therefore, no case. But the judge said, but I'll let the case continue and I'll let you keep the wiretaps and everything. And like the issue with wiretaps that he talks about, and it is true, it's like, yes, they're useful because you can catch guys who are really actually doing bad shit for sure. But then the problem is whenever you're recording thousands and thousands of hours of people, you can take something out of context and hear some guy say, you know, to his mom, I'm going to be home for spaghetti tonight. And they sound guilty.
Yeah.
You know, the judge himself said that in an interview after the trial. And I'm like, then why the fuck did you let this in? So that's why I say, like, yes, the feds come in, and when they come in, they come heavy. We've had some guys in here, they talk about how much, you know, they put into making a case and they're very confident in it. But then sometimes you have a case where even, let's say a guy's even guilty of something, they'll make him guilty of really like 5 times more than what he really is. You know, that's kind of where my concern is.
It's a legitimate concern. It happens across this country all the time. There are bad prosecutors. There are bad prosecution. And look, I even say with Sean Combs, like, I don't know the evidence yet. Like, I don't know everything that they have. A video of him doing that doesn't mean that it's a racketeering conspiracy or a sex trafficking case. So we have to see where it develops. But I 100% agree with you. And I think it happens in law enforcement too. Like there was a crazy case that I covered. I never forget it. You know, look, I believe that our law enforcement is so important, and I talked about it before. You know, there's bad apples. You can't just say there shouldn't be police officers. But on the show I host, Prime Crime, this documentary show, we did a full hour episode. This guy named Zachary Wester. You know what Zachary Wester did?
No.
He planted drugs in people's cars, and that's how he was getting his citations up, right? And you see on tape him with what appears to be a bag in his hand. I don't remember if it was meth or coke, and he like literally drops it in, and he was, you know, the multiple people came forward and said he ruined our lives, and he was convicted, and it was like the worst of the worst. You know who hates corrupt police officers the most? Do you know who hates corrupt prosecutors or lawyers or judges the most? The law enforcement, the prosecutors. It puts a bad name on the work that they do. And it happens. It's shocking, but it happens a lot.
Yeah. I wonder what gets someone to that point.
Well, think about it. If you're a prosecutor, you want to win the big cases. Yeah. It helps your career, whatever the next level is. Politics, judge, private practice. A lot of prosecutors go into defense work, and that can be quite lucrative.
But it's people's lives you're putting in your hands.
I know, but the same thing for criminals out there in general. They don't care about the other person. They care about themselves. And I see this in murder cases all the time. They kill someone. Do they think about the impact that had on the person's, their family, the loved ones? I mean, think about going back to the Luigi case. Okay, whoever killed Brian Thompson, did they think about what effect that had on his family and outside of his work as the CEO of United Healthcare? And by the way, do you even believe that the work he was doing was detrimental on a personal level to the people that affected you or whatever it might be? I mean, these are human beings, and criminals don't think that way, really. And that's what's very scary about society. And I think that's one of the interests that people have in true crime in general.
Yeah, it's really been – that was one thing I wanted to ask you about earlier, and now's a good time. Over the past 10, 12 years, you've seen such a boom in that topic, and it's ironic because, like, when you get to the really bloody stuff, like when it's all murders and things like that, it's like, what, 85% women are into it?
Yeah.
What do you think that is?
So, first of all, I think the interest really sparked during – well, there was always been big cases, right? There was the Menendez brothers, there was O.J. Simpson, it was things like that. But I think it was Serial. You remember Serial back in 2014?
Yes.
It was the Adnan Syed case. There's an interest in it. It's a mystery. It's human drama. It's a side of protection. How do we protect ourselves from the evil in this world? And it's good guys versus bad guys. It's a tale as old as time. People will always want it. Point the finger. You see it in politics. You see it everywhere. Who's the bad guy? Who's the good guy? Who do I side with? I want justice for people. These are real life stories about it. And when you deal, and look, that's, I think, an interest when you see, killers, either female killers or male killers. There's an interest. But I also think there are those, to circle back, who believe that people commit crimes, but they can change them, right? You know, those killers who get fan mail and who get remarried and there's interest. I mean, they're fascinating studies about why people do this. If, you know, going back to the Brian Kohberger case, the guy accused of killing the Idaho 4, those 4 students.
Yes. He's like going on trial right now, right?
It's going to be happening soon. If he did it, why on earth did he do that? He had no connection to them, right, from what we could see. Did he have an interest in criminology? He had an interest in what it felt like. People are fascinated by the human mind and why people do what they do. And that's not going to change. And it's really interesting to see because with the advent of podcasts and YouTube and documentaries, you're able to tell these stories in different ways and engage people in different ways and make them think about cases in different ways on their own time. You know, particularly about podcasts, it's like you can pick it up at one point, pick it up later. And I think that's a more media technology argument, but the fact that you can get more content now and digest it in the way that, you know, is available to you when it's available to you, it helps it as well.
Yeah, no, you're obviously trained in law, like that was your background and that's where your career started, but you've been on the other side now in the media for a while, so you're not in the courtroom as the defense attorney or the prosecutor or whatever. No. And you're looking at a million cases, like we said, it's like the red zone of like legal cases. Yeah. But you're looking at all these cases and you're looking at the worst ones. You've mentioned a bunch of them today, whether it be, you know, grisly murders or sexual abuse of kids and stuff like that. Like, how does it ever just drive you nuts? Because you're breaking down these cases, you're going as deep into the legal paperwork and the evidence that you're allowed to be able to see. Like, how do you
mentally?
Yeah, mentally.
I'm human, so I host this show called Sidebar, and it happened last week. I was talking about a really, really bad case. I'm not even going to get into it because same thing will happen. I teared up. Like, I can't control it when it's about children. It's like it tears. I can't deal with it. It's
do you
like
have kids?
No, not yet. But like, you know, I'm like talking about it, I'm getting emotional. Like, you're talking about people who are as innocent as can be. They deserve a chance at life. And if they're born into a situation where they're immediately abused or they're killed, it's like you can't have somebody more defenseless. And to see these monsters out there do it, it gets you angry. Now, I deal with a lot of tough subject matter. I've been doing it for years. I try to focus on the legal issues, the facts, try to create that separation. When I'm not working on it, I completely put it to bed. I don't watch true crime documentaries. I don't watch this. I try to forget it, try to think about something else because you have to for your own sake. It's really it's tough. It's really, really tough stuff. And sometimes I say to myself, I say it on air too, I'm like, I wish I was making this up, but I'm not. Like, you can't believe what people are capable of. And that's a really scary thing. And by the way, like, you know, you hope that with the advent of technology, phones, email, surveillance footage, it's harder to commit crimes than it was. Particularly because we cover a number of cases where, you know, female teachers abusing students. Why are we seeing that so much? Is there something going on? There's a proliferation of it? Or is it just they are getting caught because everything's on social media, everything's on their phone. It's not so easy to commit these crimes, and thank goodness. Which is why when the Mangione case happened, like to commit a murder like that, commit a killing like that in a metropolitan city where there are cameras everywhere, I was shocked that the suspect got away. I mean,
on a city bike.
On a city bike. I mean, it was crazy. But you hope that with the advent of technology, it makes it harder.
Yeah, I think about that a lot because you're like a GPS tracking device everywhere you go.
Oh, and by the way, if you turn it off and you leave it home and you commit a crime, well, why'd you turn it off at that point? Why did it come back on at that time? That's the Kohberger case, right? The Kohberger case.
It is? Wait, I don't know about this.
So the Kohberger case, they don't say his phone was with him during the times of the killings. They say the phone was traveling towards the area of the killings and then turned off for a period of time, and then happened to turn back on after they're killed, headed towards the direction of your home. Weird time for the phone to be off.
Very weird.
Wouldn't you say?
Yes.
So that's this thing right here. It's the number one piece of evidence for prosecutors.
Yeah, you almost wonder how there are cases that can't be solved at this point strictly because of that. Well, just because it's like, but then it gets down to, you have to be able to have evidence to get a search warrant and stuff, and you could be fishing in a city like New York. You'd be fishing through fucking a million people, and how many people are you going to get that warrant on? Not a lot.
Or you I'll give you another example. So have you heard of the Karen Reed case?
Wait, yes. What'd she do again? Is this in
Boston?
Boston, yeah.
So there's a case. I won't go into all the specifics, but there's a case. She's accused of running over her police officer boyfriend, John O'Keefe, outside and leaving him to die in the snow. So if you look at evidence like her phone or whatever, like you would see that she dropped him off at a location and then drove away. Okay.
Or backed up over him.
But you don't know. The phone's not going to tell you whether or not she ran him over, but it says she was there. Then it becomes a question of what's the physical evidence, what's the the witness testimony. But the phone will only tell you so much. So it might place somebody in a certain position. And by the way, you see defense attorneys all the time saying phone data is not 100% accurate. I can't say this, but like it helps, but it won't solve every crime. There are those though, man, the biggest idiots in the world who commit a crime and then they Google.
Oh yeah, the guy who Googled how to like dispose of a dead body.
Weird. You're looking up that at that time, like it's like and then they go, well, someone else might have had his phone and just happened to be looking at it at that time. Yeah, it's like
the old I've been hacked.
Yeah.
After you say something stupid.
Well, look, AI. I don't know. AI is crazy now. I don't know what's going to be with that.
Well, that's actually a good question.
Yeah, I don't know.
That could potentially affect some things, meaning like people could hack into other people's phones and stuff using AI. I don't even know what this looks like.
No, they don't even have to hack. Couldn't they create a video where it looks like somebody did something or like God. But here's what I'm hoping for. Okay. Here's what I'm hoping for. That as the technology advances, so does the technology to detect when something is AI. And you also can have other evidence. Like if your phone says you're somewhere else, you're going to believe this video, you're going to believe the phone.
Right.
It'll complicate it, but I don't think we're quite at that point yet. Hopefully it's scary though.
It's very scary.
It's getting really tough to. Did you see that LeBron video?
No.
So the whole beef with LeBron and Stephen A. Smith?
Oh, yeah.
So there was a video that was posted, I think like a month ago, where LeBron talked about, again, this was fake. I thought it was real. It was all on social media. Like he goes, yeah, I confronted Stephen A. Smith. He was talking bad.
Bitch.
Yeah, I was like, he said this. He said this? Yeah. And I saw to my brother, he goes, no, it's fake. I was like, oh, is it? Like, I thought it was real. I was like, oh, it's not so fake. I was like, I thought it was him.
Oh my God.
Tell me, I'm not the only one who thought that was.
I have to look at a lot of these videos 2-3 times. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's fake. Usually because it's so ridiculous. Once I put the lines together, I'm like, okay.
I mean, yes, there's like, Trump Gaza, that video where you're like, okay, you didn't see the Trump Gaza video?
The Trump Gaza video?
Oh my gosh.
Can we pull this up on Twitter?
This
Trump Gaza
first
AI?
Of all, this is, okay, so to give a little context, this was, of course, about President Trump's idea to create Gaza, as like a theme park and an investment. So if you look up, like, I think you can look it up on X, like Trump Gaza Trump Gaza AI video. Where is it? You go to videos. It's probably, I mean, that's we just got to go to videos of it.
Media, maybe? Yeah, try media.
Okay, see that one?
34
to the left.
34
that
seconds.
One. Yeah. Oh, that's
all right. Let's turn this on.
You could tell this is AI, but
yeah, I know this one.
But look, I mean, you could tell it's AI because once you see Trump and everybody, it's also hilarious. But
oh my God,
look, that's Elon.
Jesus Christ.
But yeah, I mean, this looks fake. I mean, he posted this, by the way.
Of course he did. Oh my God.
Oh, that's Elon again.
Yeah. Oh, the gold statue like Saddam.
Yeah. So that's that was
Netanyahu and him shirtless.
So you could see it looks like them, but that's fake. But but there's other ones you just don't know.
There was someone put together a short film that was just creepy. It
was all AI.
Yeah, this had to, and they said it at the front. They said, AI studios or whatever. But it was like it was around the election, and it was a spoof of Eyes Wide Shut. And you name a person that from recent history, whether it be Trump or Clinton or Kamala or Epstein or whoever, it just had all these people in the video, like going to this meeting with the weird music, and it was actually like kind of good.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God.
Are you an actor? Do you do acting?
I thought about it. I actually read A Dream of Passion in college and really, really considered doing it. The Strasberg book, because you were talking about that earlier. And I decided against it like my senior year of college. So I never ended up doing it.
Well, I don't know what the profession's if it's really gets so good. Like if you I love Tom Cruise. Love Tom Cruise. I think he's
great actor.
Great actor.
Weirdo. Great actor.
Great actor. I'll watch anything. You know, he's getting older. Yes, he's still running around doing stuff, but if you could take an AI video and you make him 35 and he's doing his stunts, at the very least, have him do the I mean, is that the future of it? Do you pay the actor for the rights to use their image, their name, image?
Well, if he were still, let's say he's not like a decrepit 95-year-old man, and it was like right now, and he couldn't do certain things. Yeah. If it were still him, like remember how they CGI'd De Niro and Pacino for The Irishman?
Wait, come on,
please.
The scene where he's beating the guy up outside and he does the little kick. I'm like, I love. They're like, come here, young man. You're a young man. You got a good future ahead of you. Like, am I the only one? What are we talking about here?
Well, they were trying to make that. I was following that movie from when I was like 10 years old. It was based on a book called "So I Hear You Paint Houses."
Yes,
they were trying to make that for like 17 years, and they just waited too long.
Yes, they did.
It was still really good, but
good,
like
the
CGI, that was CGI though. But like, imagine that like Cruise is with it. He's not you know, Gene Hackman was at the end, 95 years old or something, and he could do all the acting, but you know, his legs don't move the same. So you AI'd how he moved. That could work. That said, if it were just AI recreating Tom Cruise, this is where I'd love your opinion. It's like, to me, there's something about the fact that you know it's a human being, Tom Cruise, when I'm watching a Tom Cruise movie right now, versus like, I know that's actually just AI Tom Cruise, that takes away the magic of it.
Acting's all about humans. It's all about that, you know, that human connection. And, you know, some of the best scenes in movies, Inglourious Bastards, right? It's not action. It's watching that scene at the beginning, that conversation, looking at their eyes. Acting's all about eyes. You are going to lose that if it's AI. I 100% agree. I will say, I thought the interesting way they did it was the new Indiana Jones movie. You see what happened?
I haven't seen this stuff.
So in the first 15 minutes, it's a flashback. And actually, I don't know if you probably can't show it, but in the first 15 minutes, it's Harrison Ford's body, younger face. It's like Harrison Ford at 35. You wouldn't know the difference. You would not know it's a difference.
And he's doing it, right?
So I don't remember if they might have had a younger actor. I don't know how they did it, but I remember it was his face with his current body with a younger face, and it was incredible. It looked like they filmed it in the 90s or the 80s. Like you couldn't tell. It was incredible. And I'm wondering if that's the future, because, you know, they could have probably done a whole Harrison Ford movie as him, young Harrison Ford, as young Indiana Jones. Is that the future? I don't know.
Yeah, you're hitting a lot of things that I'm pretty passionate about too, as far as like how I look at this stuff. But like, one of my favorite quotes ever is Al Pacino said it. I don't know if he came up with it though. I feel like it might have been something before that, but he said, it's easy to fool the eyes, it's hard to fool the heart. And that's the real trouble with this stuff, because it's like, you know, that sounds like if it's actually Harrison Ford and you just made him look younger and it actually looked real that he looked younger, but he's doing the job. Okay, I can get with that. But if it's just like an AI movie, like that example I gave of the Eyes Wide Shut spoof, it's funny and very interesting and like kind of good, but if it were just a real movie, I would, you know, it was a 2-minute reel. You know what I mean?
That's what separates a great movie from, like, you can have two action scenes, right? You could have a shootout in one, a shootout in another, but one's a B-rated movie, one's an A-rated movie because of the acting and your connection to the characters. And that's all that it is. So, yeah, hopefully it's one of those situations that we're not replaced by AI immediately.
And there's, you know, the eyes are the windows to the soul. And I will say, the way that I built this podcast, the only reason I exist is because at a time when no podcasts were even making shorts, let alone stuff that was like even halfway good, I was like, that's how I could do this. So I was making shorts and making movies out of them. And I would scroll, because I have very bad OCD. for a 35-second clip, I would spend 30 to 35 hours on it, usually closer to about 25, but like if it were a really good one, because I would go through on mute on YouTube B-roll in HD of just things that I could match together to make the story, right? So I would reinvent. I might take like the movie Apocalypto and a bunch of scenes from that and mix it with, as dumb as this sounds, like The Rock in Jumanji, because it's a similar setting, and be able to match that to the stories that Paul Rosalie told in episode 124 and make a movie that's based on the literal words he's saying. It's happening on the screen. So what I would do is I would just watch these things on mute because I didn't want to hear what the people were saying, because then it would like fuck up my head, like, because I'd be like, well, that's something different that's happening. I kind of wanted to make it like a fever dream. And so I learned more than ever just what makes the greatest actors and actresses what they are. And the number one thing is their eyes. It's they either got it or they don't. And you talk about that Inglourious Basterds scene. That part where they zoom in to Christoph Waltz, and his eyes, his face just sinks a little bit, Or are you sheltering enemies of the state? You're like,
or the scene when he's one of my favorite scenes is when he's making her eat the strudel, like they're at the dinner, and he's just like, he goes, I have one more thing I have to ask you, and he just stares at you, but I don't remember what it was. By the way, so you have Godfather behind you, right? No better scene, in my opinion, about eyes than Godfather 1. Michael him thinking about if he's going to pull out the gun, if he's ever going to do this, it was all eyes. It was all eyes, and it wasn't overacting. It was like you were 100% believing, like, what is he about to do? The tension's building, and I think it's a great scene.
That's why they didn't fire him. They went and did
that scene.
I don't know if you know that story, but they were literally like, Coppola was fighting for him every day. The studio's like, no, fuck it. We don't like what the scenes we're seeing, so we're going to fire him. And Coppola moved that scene up. He said, we're filming this today. And him and Al Lettieri went in there and filmed it. And then they showed the studio bosses, and they were like, okay, he can stay.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, it's perfect.
I didn't know they didn't like it. They didn't want him.
Like all the little, like when he goes into the bathroom, he just like holds it, like.
He fixes his hair. Yeah.
And you're watching him from behind. You just see like the weight of the world. Like he's about to shift into this new world.
When did you first see The Godfather?
When I was 13.
Okay.
I've seen it about 1,500 times.
Okay, you're a young looking guy. That could be like 10 years. I don't know. Okay, but I won't ask you your age. But here's what's funny. So the reason I say it is my wife's younger than me. My wife has never seen The Godfather.
Oh my
God. So I said, okay, we're gonna watch it, and I'm curious. A movie that's how old are we talking now? 50 years old?
1972.
Yeah. Okay.
I nuked myself with coffee.
It's okay. I said to her, I was like, we're gonna watch it, and I'm curious if it'll hold up. She loved it. She was, when the car blew up from Apollonia died, she was like heartbroken. Like she could. That movie is one of the few, and I say this with songs too. We got good songs and there's good musicians, but what will last the test of time 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road? You wonder what a movie will be like, a song that will last the test of time. That's one of those movies. It just never gets old.
It looks like it was made yesterday.
Yeah.
Especially with it, because they, it's saved at the AFI and they've digitally been able to remaster every single part to make it perfect Blu-ray. Everything about it looks like it's made tomorrow or made yesterday. It is a perfect movie. Every actor in there who was even, many of them unknown at the time, became a global superstar, righteously so, and did a million amazing movies after that. It's like, sometimes I just look at it and I'm saying to myself, I know they were miserable while they were making it because all the stress behind the scenes, but at the end of that, you still got to look at it and go, whoa, like,
it's masterpiece.
I can't believe we did that.
There's only one error in the movie. You know
when James Caan is kicking him and he misses.
He misses. How'd they miss that?
I mean, well, he and Johnny, because I had Johnny.
Yeah.
They did.
Did you ask him about that?
Well, they did. I didn't ask him specifically about the miss, I don't think, on camera. I definitely talked to him about that, though. But, they did hate each other. That was real. Yeah. Like, the two of them did not get along. And so that scene, it's funny because he misses when he's hitting, he takes the trash barrel and, like, technically hits it on the rail.
And then he misses the punch.
But in that scene, he did actually do a lot of real shit, and he broke Johnny's ribs.
Kicked him. He kicked him. I think I heard that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like of all the places where you're going to get something fake, you got it in the scene where he actually accidentally did it completely real too.
Yeah.
So it's like a little bit of irony.
By the way, one of the things they teach you in acting school is like how to. It's mostly like stage acting, and then it can translate into to movies. But they teach you how to do fake fighting, and that was my favorite part.
Oh, they do?
It's like that is like you. It's how you face somebody, and they'll do a punch, but the way you're positioned, it's like, right, it'll be like a real slap. And it's awesome because it looks entirely real, and you do a whole choreographed fight in one class that I did, and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Like it looks really good. Well, but I also kicked somebody back. So like,
oh, you did.
He's like you went a little.
You get him good.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's a nice guy. I felt bad, but yeah, I kicked him a little bit. I was like, I'm not. This is why I'm not an actor.
But in the movies though, shout out also to the cinematographers when they have like those really complex scenes, like especially in war movies where there's a million things happening and there's actually weaponry and stuff, and somehow they make it look like it's not just okay, stop.
Well, how they do John Wick? I mean, that's incredible, right? It's incredible. Or Daredevil. I mean, I think those are some of the best fights. But I don't know how they do that stuff. It's incredible. What a science that is.
Yeah. John Wick, though, also Keanu legit is nasty with a gun.
Yeah,
like he trained his ass off for that. Yeah. Like when he goes out, I don't know if you've seen the videos of him shooting. Like,
he's
on
amazing.
The course.
He's amazing. He's amazing.
I mean, there's probably Navy SEALs. I don't want to speak for him that look at that and go.
He's legit. Yeah. He could if there was an attack going down, give him a weapon.
Yeah, he's right over here.
Yeah, he's fine. He's good. He's good. He's really John Wick. Yeah, he's making another one. There's going to be John Wick 5.
Another one?
5. Yeah.
Do 10.
Do 10?
Do 10.
Dead 10? Yeah.
Fuck it.
Age. They're going to reverse aging, I believe, in the next 20 years. I think they're going to figure out a way to reverse the cellular.
I don't know enough about the science to give a clear opinion on that, but I think nor a timeline, but I think we're on a trend line towards something like that.
I think that's fair. Yeah. We're in a good time to do that. I mean, everything else is a disaster, but why not? We'll be able to live for a long time as everything's going on. Yeah. It's fine. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. It feels like we're kind of at that, I don't want to say like tipping point, but I think people have been filled with enough fighting and enough bullshit over the past, say, 10, 15 years that there's now, what's the word I'm looking for? It's settled in enough that there are enough people kind of like, what the fuck? I'm just going to live my life.
Well, you hope. And I mean, you hope that it's actually interesting. Like, so I do politics as well. I do.
You do?
I fill in for Dan Abrams on Sirius XM. I do hosting for them. I also host another show on this thing called Mediaite.
Is there anything you don't do?
I'm working constantly. And I do the show called Spin Room. And like what we try to do, and I work for News Nation, and what we try to do is literally down the middle. Like there's more that we agree on than we disagree on. And even if we can disagree, can you have a normal conversation about it and like really understand the other side? Easier said than done. I think that it's a time right now when emotions are heated. And by the way, just to circle back, I think one of the reasons you see the popularity of certain shows, you see the popularity of certain trials like Johnny Depp, Amber Heard, or Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and Justin Baldoni, is because people need it. They need that outlet. They need something to distract away from something else. And by the way, people are tribal. They love so just let me tell you about this. So the Justin Baldoni, Blake Lively thing.
You know they filmed all that right here, right?
Is that where it was Hoboken?
When I moved here, they were filming.
Did you watch it? Did you see it?
I can't get myself to watch that movie.
Oh no, I mean, did you see them filming?
I did not see them up. I saw Chalamet. He was filming on this street.
Oh, he's a real talent.
Amazing.
He's like the next big one. But so we posted a poll on Law and Crime. At this point in time, how many of you agree with Blake Lively and how many of you agree with Justin Baldoni? 95% or 97% were favoring Justin Baldoni. I mean, so this is tribal. People take sides and they have when I'll do a video on Sidebar on Law and Crime and I present both sides, I present an argument in her favor, like this is her argument, this is her filing, let me break it down. You're biased. You're in her camp. Like everybody's going crazy.
Hashtag Team Justin.
It's nuts. But that's like, I don't know if it's a distraction or people just need those sides, the good guys, the bad guys. It's, again, as I said, tale as old as time.
I think part of it is a little bit of a meaning of life crisis.
Yeah, that's fair.
For some people, because we now, in the internet era, we have access to all the perfect lives and stuff like that. And so 99.999% of us don't have those lives. And so what we feel like what we're doing in our world, whether it be just our life at home or what our job is, feels less sexy than ever before. Things we wouldn't have thought about 30 years ago.
Yeah.
That I think people kind of turn that inward and then project it outward. And, they have to feel like they're on the teams with these people, and people form communities online. And now like you said, you get communities on fucking legal cases that this one hasn't even happened yet.
No. But a lot has been put forward.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into that. We'll come back to Diddy at some point. But what is going on here? They filmed this movie called It Ends With Us here in Hoboken. A lot of it, and
your favorite movie.
I haven't seen it, but he is the director and co-star with her.
So he formed this production company called Wayfarer Studios that produced the film.
Okay.
He's the director and co-star. He was the one who was responsible for getting adapted from a book into a movie. He was ahead of the whole thing. And it was interesting because when the movie was in production, but really more so when the movie was about to air, was about to premiere last summer, you saw all this stuff online about bad blood between him and her. And you didn't know exactly what was going on, but you saw these rumors. Something's going on with Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni. He's not attending the premiere. What's happening?
Were you already looking at this? Because you're like, this is going to be the case.
My wife was watching it on the social media and was like, every 5 seconds, it was stuff about Blake Lively. And there was a lot of negative attention for Blake Lively. There was negative stories. Her old interviews were surfacing. There was a lot of anti-Blake Lively sentiment. And I was like, oh, that's, it's interesting. So you fast forward to December, and she files a legal complaint, not a lawsuit yet, a legal complaint. It's with the Civil Rights Department of California. It's not to bog down, but in order to file a lawsuit, you need to do that first for this kind of labor dispute. So she files this complaint, and she basically says, you know why I was getting all that bad press? It was Justin Baldoni and his team. They launched a smear campaign against me, an online digital media smear campaign against me, amplifying negative voices, amplifying negative stories. And you know why? Because I complained about him sexually harassing me on the set. This is a guy, this is her allegations, this is a guy who came forward, would improvise intimate scenes with me. He would talk about pornography. He was very inappropriate. And I reported my concerns, and they agreed to make changes, and out of fear that I would go public, even though I didn't, they retaliated against me, tried to smear my whole reputation. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. And she has the text messages to prove it, because through a subpoena, she got all these text messages between people on Justin Baldoni's side, his PR people, his crisis management person, and there was arguably a case that they were trying to create a smear campaign against her, a public relations campaign against her, And I look at this lawsuit, Hollywood looks at this complaint, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, she's the victim in all this. Now I understand why there was this negative stories.
But hold on, to cut you off though, sorry.
Yeah.
At the same time, wasn't this when the movie was like premiering and she's forcing him into the basement and everything? So could it have been a pre-shot or something? So
I will get to that. So she would make the argument, I was a professional. I did what I had to do, even though all this was going on. The premiere's happening, and I didn't realize. She would say, I didn't know the extent of why I was getting all this bad press until I started realizing it might have been his side. And then she gets a subpoena, and she gets all this information. She puts it out there, and then 2 days later or a day later, the New York Times publishes a piece about all this. Justin Baldoni loses his talent agency. He loses awards that he got. And, it seems like a classic case of, my gosh, another creep in Hollywood, right? Another creep in Hollywood. And then Justin Baldoni fires back, and he goes, whoa, this is not the story. He files a lawsuit against the New York Times, Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds. He goes, I got the proof that not only did I not sexually harass her, not only is she taking out of context every conversation we ever had, and I'll show you, but also she was the one who bullied me. She was the one who actually kicked me out of my own film, took control over the movie, prevented me and my family and friends from attending the premiere, and weaponized false allegations against me. She's the one who's at fault. So I've seen cases before where something can look black and white. This is like the grayest case I've ever seen. Now what happened is, his team, going back to the idea of how much is important in the court of law versus the court of public opinion, because I think they're both trying to rehabilitate their careers.
Of course.
His team puts out this video, this footage of them behind the scenes, She had said before in her previous filing, he started sniffing me, asking, you smell so good. He was improvising kiss scenes. It was weird. Well, when he publishes the video,
where she's like grabbing him and pulling him in,
you see in the video, she talks about her spray tan. So he goes, oh, it smells good. That's different than him coming up to her and be like, oh, you smell so good. Different context. She starts making fun of his nose, saying he basically needs surgery. Yeah. Okay. She's like, now her side would say she's uncomfortable. You can see she's uncomfortable with him. He's like, she's the one who got personal. That's, two different sides of the story here. It's going to be up to a jury to decide. And then they post text messages that he had with Ryan Reynolds, where Ryan Reynolds was praising him. He claims that Ryan Reynolds and Taylor Swift had pressured him into accepting Blake Lively's rewrites of a key scene. So it's a big, big PR legal mess.
Wait, Taylor Swift was stepping in? I know she's friends with her, but to pressure?
So she's not a defendant in this case whatsoever. She's not named. But the allegation is from Justin Baldoni. Look, Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds are A-list stars. And they start coming to me. She wants to make changes to the script. I don't want to give her full control, but I don't know what to do. I'm not their level. Like, if they want to make changes, I'll try to push back lightly. And when I tried to push back, Blake Lively comes back and feels like I didn't really feel like you accepted my changes. So he makes the allegation he was invited to her penthouse one night, and he shows up, and Ryan Reynolds and Taylor Swift there, and like, I'm paraphrasing, but basically like, wasn't Blake's rewrites of that scene just great? Isn't she have such a great mind? And so he felt the pressure from A-listers like them. Now, Taylor Swift does not want any part of this. Ryan Reynolds has been trying to get dismissed from this case. He's like, anything. He goes, I have no part in this. And there was an allegation.
Wait, he's trying to get dismissed from the case that he filed.
He didn't file
that Baldoni filed against him.
Yes, because he wasn't a part of the case that his wife filed against Baldoni. Baldoni turned around and filed a lawsuit against Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. That's how he got broke. And the reason is because Baldoni says, not only do I feel like he got himself involved, but B, he went to my talent agency and said I'm a sexual predator. And he basically,
that's true.
And what's interesting is Ryan Reynolds has made the counter argument, I should be dismissed because even if I said that, first of all, that's not defamation. And B, it was my opinion. I actually believed it. And also I should be protected under the law from these kind of like retaliatory lawsuits when it's my free speech right to say what I said. So it's a big back and forth about who's going to be dismissed. Then you have the New York Times involved and you have all this. This is a trial that's scheduled for 2026. If it happens,
2026. Oh, Jesus Christ, we got to talk about this for another year.
And it's been a big battle in the court of public opinion. And right now there are people who believe that from what they've seen so far, without the full picture, and each lawsuit's like over 100 pages. There are people who've read all of it. They believe he's in the right and she's in the wrong. There are also those in Hollywood who believe she's in the right, he's in the wrong. So it's going to be, I keep getting this question. Do they want to go to trial? Do they want to go to trial?
Hey guys, if you haven't already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. It's a huge, huge help. Thank you.
I think it's a risk, her going on the stand, him going on the stand. Now, I don't believe, there would be no cameras in this courtroom because it would also be in New York. So again, there's no cameras in New York.
But it's state court, right?
No cameras in state court unless it's very limited
Even
circumstances.
in New York?
Yeah, it's a problem. I don't, it'll be interesting to see if it goes to trial. There's a lot riding on it. I don't think Ryan Reynolds wants any part in this.
Because he's got a perfect public brand prior to this. Yeah. Right? He's like Mr. Deadpool, lovable to the fans, like the greatest marketer in Hollywood among the actors, arguably.
I'm a huge fan. But she had to do this because she was like, my career was tanking. People were doing all this negative press about me. Well, guess what? If you take her allegations as true, I'm the victim. Now, if his allegations are true, you'd say, why would you file a lawsuit against Justin Baldoni knowing he had all this to prove that you were the one taking control of the film or you were the one who were weaponizing false allegations? Yeah. But look, you don't know what to believe. The truth is you have no idea what happened. It all goes down to one thing, whether or not he actually sexually harassed her on that set. And you made a great point before about the Combs case. You said, can't two things be true at once? Mm. There could be instances where they're jovial, they're collaborative, they're joking around about things, they're personal, but it doesn't give somebody the right to step over the line. And that can be one instance, two instances can be sexual harassment.
Or it's misinterpreted too.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just try to present both sides. I try to present the legal arguments for both sides. They're represented by incredible attorneys making some really good legal arguments.
Yeah, she just hired a CIA guy to be her PR person too.
Yeah.
And he was high up.
Yeah. So it's a lot at stake here. And if you're Justin Baldoni, I mean, you know,
his career's over at the moment if he does not win this.
Yeah. And, but again, with public attention, you know, favoring him, you wonder if it helped him a little bit. I mean, he's really in the news all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people had never heard of him before.
Yeah.
And now he's like,
I didn't watch him on that show. I don't remember. He was on some show.
Definitely didn't, you know, but I think there's two underlying themes here. And this isn't a statement to say like who's right or who's wrong in the case. Even before you look at the actual facts of the case. On one side, you have, I'll just even remove Ryan Reynolds for a minute, just call Blake Lively enough. On one side, you have Blake Lively, superstar, Taylor Swift's best friend, A-list of the A-list, gazillionaire, and then, fuck it, yeah, her husband's Ryan Reynolds too. They are the creme de la creme, the elite, if you will. On the other side, you have the guy who started his own production company, is a lot less known. He's not perfect looking. He's got a little bit of a beak nose, and suddenly
you don't think he's a good looking guy?
I think he's a good looking dude, but he's not like he's not an 11 Hollywood heartthrob, right?
Yeah.
So like he's relatable. He's like he's an underdog. Is my point. Right. And at the same time, this is happening 2 years after the Depp Heard thing that flipped on its face the idea that it could always just be the man abusing the woman. So you have two things happening. You have a cultural shift in how we view abuse cases, not across the board, but just like as maybe this is a possibility too. And you have this like underdog versus the elites mentality. So before you even look at the case, they see themselves in that guy more than they do in the perfect Hollywood couple.
Right. I think that's a very, very fair assessment. I think we've also live in a culture right now where nothing is what it seems on its face. There's always like, well, what's really going on? Well, if you do a little bit more research, and sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not. And it comes down to the law and the evidence. Look, I think you go back to Johnny Depp, Amber Heard. He had an incredible defense team. He put on an incredibly strong argument. He muddied the waters a lot. And
he also hired a hot lawyer. That helped.
Well, you know, look, she became a superstar after that. She became partner. By the way, they all became celebrities. Ben Chu, his attorney, good friend of mine, like they all are superstars. And that is a big thing for lawyers, you know? I mean, that helps. You become a big name. Start with Johnny Cochran, right? I mean, it's a big thing.
Glove don't fit. You must quit.
Yeah. You interviewed Brian McMonagle, right?
I love that you know that. 115. Yeah.
Brian's awesome. He's a big name. He made his name with Cosby. I mean, he made his name for a lot, but he was, you know, very well known for Cosby. But
I do want to say he's one of the greatest guys ever, too.
He is awesome. Yeah. And he's brilliant. I'm lucky to have the opportunity to get his legal perspective. He's phenomenal.
You do often?
Oh yeah, on Sidebar a lot, particularly about Diddy and other high-profile cases, because it's different. It's different representing a criminal defendant versus also representing a high-profile celebrity criminal defendant. Yes. It's very different. But he's brilliant legal mind.
I've known him since I was like 3 or 4 years old.
Really?
Yeah, he's from my hometown.
Well, tell him I said hi.
Yeah, really. He and his wife are really tight with my parents. So I've known him forever, but I really appreciated that sit down I did with him because he's tough to get going. He's such a humble guy. Like he's a brilliant talker, like in the courtroom, but he's one of those guys where it's like he'll talk for 5 minutes and look at you and go, "Your turn," on a podcast. But I'd always looked at him and he was such a, like, growing up, he's literally like the greatest guy ever.
Yep,
and the most moral guy too, is how I would describe him. And he would not be able to say this on camera, but I could say this as not being him. A lot of people he defends probably are guilty, right? And so I was so curious, like, how he could put that apart, and the way he described it in that podcast was so perfect, and like the heaviness with which he approaches it. Yeah. Not just from the perspective of like the people involved, be it the victims and also, whose life is on the line in the courtroom, but also the constitutional aspect of it, of like, all right, your job is to put the government to the test. Yep. Because that's how the system works. And like we need guys like that sitting in that seat and doing the job he does.
It's not an easy job. Not an easy job, but particularly, if you're defending the worst of the worst, I mean, you become a target, you put a target on your back. It's not easy. So I give him a ton of credit. He's brilliant. I think it reemphasizes the idea everybody's entitled to due process. And, even cases like I talk about this on News Nation a lot, the whole immigration issue. And like, you can have a conversation that there are people who don't belong in this country. Criminals do not belong in this country, but we have a system in place. There is due process put in place.
Right.
You have to follow those protocols before certain actions can be taken.
Yes.
That's just the way our system is. You want to change the laws, you want to change the system, go right ahead.
Yes.
But you got to go through Congress to do it. And so, our system is in place where, even if it seems all the evidence is there to convict somebody, they still deserve a trial. If they plead guilty, you still have to ensure they know what their rights are, what they're giving up, because there are safeguards in place. You don't want to live in the worst case, I say this all the time. The Brian Koberger case, I think the evidence, as I mentioned, seems very strong that he committed this quadruple homicide. But the worst thing that would happen is if there is a mistake that's made where he is convicted and that conviction is overturned and they have to retry him. Think about the pain how painful that's going to be for the family. So I say in the cases of the most high-profile defendants where they look guilty as sin, you have to dot every I, cross every T, make sure nothing is wrong, because the worst thing that would happen is, for everybody, is to have a conviction overturned and then a retrial. It's incredibly painful, time-consuming. It's a weakness. You have a trial 2025, have a retrial, not until 2028, 2029, something like that. Evidence gets stale. You might not get a conviction a second time around. So it becomes very, very important to make sure that everybody's rights are preserved in every single way, even in the Mangione case. I mean, again, you have to ensure. I talked about that whole idea about was his rights violated in Altoona, Pennsylvania. They have to make sure they weren't, because that could really be a problem down the road.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's the bigger picture. Like if someone is guilty as hell, but the system was broken on the federal side for the evidence to be collected for them to be guilty, the people who are victims in that case, my heart goes out to them like crazy, because I can't even imagine what that must be like.
Yeah.
But analytically, almost like you're being a computer looking at the system, the unfortunate reality is you got to let that person go.
So going back to Harvey Weinstein for a second, I think I was in that trial. I think there was strong evidence he committed those crimes. I don't disagree with the guilty verdict, but conviction was overturned in New York. You know why? Because evidence was let in that shouldn't have been allowed in. And so
what was that evidence?
It was called Molyneux witnesses. And basically he was charged with respect to certain women, but then the judge allowed other women to testify about uncharged conduct to show a pattern. That's quite prejudicial, right? Imagine, okay. His conviction was overturned. For somebody who followed the evidence, followed that trial, said, I don't disagree with the verdict, it made sense based on the evidence presented, he deserved to have that conviction overturned. And if I believe that that is somebody who is a criminal, right, who I still believe that he is entitled to have his rights not violated. And that's important, because now you have a retrial. What's going to happen now? Bill Cosby, again, look, his conviction was overturned because of an agreement, a deal that shouldn't have been made, and it was
it's like a handshake deal, right?
It was a misrepresentation. He relied on it. He's entitled to make sure his rights aren't violated. Everybody has that right.
Yes.
Even the worst of the worst. And it's not because I like them. It's not because I agree with them. It's because you have to make sure that the process is followed. Otherwise, the consequences could be quite severe.
It's also, though, easier. This is what sucks, and it's just how it is. The two people you just mentioned, Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby, were famous people with ridiculous access to money.
Yeah.
And so they got the greatest lawyers who can go not only dig up the evidence for these kinds of things, but then be able to get it through the court system at, blank check type situation. Whereas the regular guy who has that happen and is sitting in his jail cell or whatever, he may never get his day in court about that.
It's unfortunate, right? Everybody's entitled to a lawyer. You're entitled to a public defender, but do they have the same kind of resources? And sometimes the government, if you can make a good argument, to the court, we need these certain experts to testify for the defense. Sometimes those will be paid, but it's limited circumstances. I 100% agree. They say if you can afford the best, you'll get the best. Yep. But I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Now Harvey Weinstein was. So you were in the trial.
No, I wasn't a witness. I'm saying you were attending. So I was attending, and I'll tell you this much. This is what's so interesting.
This episode is brought to you by Saratoga.
as we talk about Harvey Weinstein. So I was in that courtroom for the trial, and I was out in the freezing cold in February to try to get a seat into that trial. It was, my hands froze over.
What was this, 2020?
This was 2020. Yeah. This was right before the pandemic.
Yep.
This was like right before the pandemic. This was like weeks away. And I sat right behind him, like right behind him. I was
sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I was literally right behind him. And it was a fascinating case because Harvey Weinstein, there was nobody bigger in Hollywood than him. And to hear what these women testified to was really difficult. And you had a jury that had a split verdict. They didn't find him guilty across the board, which again, I think emphasizes a jury that carefully considers the evidence and the facts. And it was the tension in that courtroom. There was a point, and I might be mispronouncing her name. You probably know it. Annabella Sciorra.
She was in The Sopranos.
Yes, she was a witness who testified.
Gloria Trillo.
Yeah, she had testified about being abused by Harvey Weinstein, I believe, back in the 90s. You know, when she's talking about what happened, you could hear a pin drop in that courtroom, and it was packed. And I remember at one point, she thought somebody was videotaping her in the courtroom, and she stopped, and she was like, is somebody videotaping me? And like we all looked, and it was nobody. She was, we made sure. But like that was the concern. That's the concern that they have about having to I mean, think about what she's testifying to.
What did she say? Obviously, he abused her. What was the nature?
I believe it was a long time ago, but I think it was like something about him coming to her apartment. I don't remember exactly, but like she would go. You have to go detail by detail about what you remember to understand the circumstances of it. It's not easy to go through. It's not easy to hear about this, and you know, to have everybody listening in and taking notes and. It was quite an experience. It was quite a trial to say because it was the first, you know, it was Me Too, you know, somebody being held accountable. And he had great lawyers. I'm friends with his lawyers, great lawyers.
Who were his lawyers?
He was Arthur Aidala.
Yes.
Great lawyer. Love him. He's great. And Donna Rotullo, great counsel. And, you know, she talked about how she got a lot of hate for what she was doing. And I didn't think that was fair. She representing her client who is entitled to a defense. And she takes a lot of heat because she had to cross-examine these, you know, victims or alleged victims, and she's just doing her job. So it was unfortunate, but it was a crazy experience. And I remember when the verdict came down, you know, there were deputies lining every aspect of that courtroom. They didn't know what was going to happen. Somebody jumps up, whatever. And when they said guilty, it was like, whoa.
Was there anyone in there supporting him?
No.
Yeah.
I didn't see. I never saw his wife. I mean, he had PR people with him. He had his lawyers with him, but I didn't see any support for him, as far as I remember. No.
Yeah. I mean,
he was toxic.
Yeah.
He was toxic.
Yeah. I mean, he was also the ugliest fucking person. Oh my God.
Well, the stuff that we heard in that trial. About
I mean,
his
even
anatomy. It was like, it was crazy stuff.
They were like, he had like an egg dick or some shit.
Well, he had to take like injections and things like that. It was, I couldn't believe what I was listening to.
Honestly, like, it sounds like what he did was usually just abuse people, but anyone who actually consented to it should be put in jail. I mean, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and I think there was an argument there, like, you had to it wasn't a trial about him as a human being or him as personality, if he was yelling at people or tough on people, whatever it was, or it was about, did he commit these acts, these illegal sex acts? And that's what the jury had to consider. And again, they were very careful because they didn't convict him across the board.
Yeah, and the one thing about Weinstein was starting the whole Me Too thing is that I agree with you. I think it's an important moment for people victims who had felt like they were not able to speak out in the past, especially because it's more powerful people than them who had taken advantage of them and stuff like that. I think that's such an important social moment. The sad part about the movement, though, to me, is that unfortunately you also had people infected who just, I don't know what the fuck it was, what's wrong with them, but they want attention.
Yeah.
And what that does to me is you suddenly get all these claims, not necessarily against a guy like Weinstein, but against some of the other people who had claims against them. And once some of them are then proven to very clearly have never happened, it creates a boy who cried wolf scenario in society, which I have seen. I think that has happened to where people are like, yeah, fucking everyone claims this or that. And now we're back at that point sometimes where people are like, you know, a victim comes forward and they go, all right, hon, what do you really do? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's a tough spot to be because I can't imagine being in that position, especially like think about a guy like Weinstein and how powerful he was to hold people's careers in the palm of their hand, and to have to maybe still exist in that ecosystem, like out there in Hollywood, you know, making a living or whatever. And this guy's always around and you know what he did to you, but you can't do anything about it. That's like the worst. Like that sends a shiver up my spine thinking about
It's
that.
the same thing with the Combs case, right? If you know, these cases against high profile people, the number one question is, why did you wait years to come forward with a lawsuit? Why did you wait years before you go to authorities? And you say, I was in fear. I didn't think I had the power, that anyone would listen to me, that my career would be tarnished, my jeopardy, you know, my life would be tarnished. Now, I agree with you. There are those who also come out of the woodwork as well, and that takes away from the legitimate stories or the allegedly legitimate stories. And that's a big battle. And again, I think you're going to see it amplified during the Sean Combs case as well. But yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate because with any good thing that happens, people will take advantage of it. And, you know, they feel that, look, do you see the thing that happened with Jay-Z?
Where the 13-year-old like came out and claimed
that case is done. The case is done.
Yeah.
Now, why was that case dismissed? I think there's a fair argument that the story didn't add up. His lawyers were picking apart this woman's story that, you know, she claims this happened. We have documentary evidence to prove it didn't.
He wasn't even in the same place.
And that case was ultimately dropped. And it becomes a question, why was it brought? How was it brought? Why did she come forward? I mean, does she really believe these claims happened, but her recollection's different? I mean, we don't have a clear answer, but at a worst case assumption, imagine the story wasn't real and Jay-Z now was, you know, falsely accused of abusing a 13-year-old girl back in 2000. So, you know, look, it doesn't mean, excuse me, doesn't mean it didn't necessarily happen. We don't know, but the fact that you go forward with that case knowing that you don't necessarily have the evidence to back it up is a problem.
Yeah, and I've talked about this before, but with the Jay-Z thing, first of all, anyone who would be convicted, righteously so, in a court of law of abusing a kid, fucking throw them in prison and lock away the key. I don't care what they've done or whatever. Like, that shouldn't have to be said, but let's preface it with that. That said, there has been like a weird obsession, I think, and this has been a few years now, with people wanting a guy like Jay-Z to be that guy. Like, I don't know what it is. Again, if for some reason there were facts that came out and he actually was great, or terrible, but throw him in prison. But like, people are obsessed with, oh, wait till the Jay-Z stuff comes out. Now, I will say this, and this is anecdotal and counts for very little. I had heard whispers, and I know a lot of people who had heard whispers about Diddy for years. Been hearing whispers about him since 2016 or 2017, and I'm a fucking regular schmo. I've never heard that about Jay-Z.
Yeah. It's as much as we love to see the success story, people rising, they love the fall. And I think it's also this idea of, we talked about it before, there's got to be more to the story. What's Hollywood really up to? What's the political scheme? What are the rich and powerful really up to? And it amplified with the Diddy case, right? You know, this idea, oh, you know, everybody was attending his parties. If he's accused of this, who else was a part of it? The Epstein situation, right? The Epstein files. Everybody wants to know who was involved, who was. It's that idea of justice. It's idea of how do we take down the most powerful? This level of, we immediately assume there's corruption at the highest levels. There's bad actors at the highest levels, I'm sure, but it's not always the case. And it's unfortunate because the people get that sense of excitement, right, at seeing a story like this break.
Yeah, but there's something wrong with us about that.
Yeah.
Because you should never, again, where the people are doing these things, they should be caught and rooted out the whole bit. But you should never be rooting and hoping for someone without having any evidence that, like, they actually are this monster. And that's
by the way, a conviction, a case that's dropped, a not guilty verdict, that won't change people's perspective on it.
That's right. Yeah.
At all.
I want it to be true.
At all. Okay? Even if whatever happens in any of these cases, people will believe whatever it is they want to believe. That's not going to change. It has obviously legal consequences, but I go back to the idea of there's the court of law and there's a court of public opinion. And sometimes one battle, success in one area is not going to translate into a success into the other.
And again, it goes back to also we have this whole elite versus Main Street kind of thing going on in society right now, and people it's like a blood war in that way online, and everyone, you know, behind a Twitter account can say whatever they want regardless of who they are. I was talking with a few guys who work out in Hollywood recently, and it was like a really refreshing perspective to hear from them and like how they were going through how people see this stuff, and they're like, yeah, there's fucked up people like Diddy. Like there's some fucked up shit. Some of the business is fucked up and the people suck. And like where that is, like put it in court 100%. But they're like, we don't like operate under the same roof and have a group chain every day. Like whose place are we going to fuck today? It doesn't work like that.
It doesn't? That's not how it works. No, there's this aspect that Hollywood's bizarre, right? Like what they're up to is bizarre. I'll give you a funny story. I'm not going to name the name, but I'll tell you a funny story. So I'm with my dad, and we're going in this elevator at this hotel. He was staying in the city. So we're going up. And in the elevator was a very, very high-profile A-list movie star, okay? I can't tell you who it was. I can't, but it was very funny. We walk in, and my dad and I look very similar. We have a radio show together, Always in Fashion. Encourage everybody to check it out. We look very similar. We walk in, and the guy goes, without breaking me, he goes, "Whoa, what are you two boys up to tonight?" Being like, he thought I was like we were together. Like he thought that we were like some sort of couple, or like I was
And he looks like you?
Yeah. And I was like, what? And he goes, yeah, what do you guys? I'm like, no. And I said his name. I was like, no. I was like, you've been in, I promise you, I was like, you've been in Hollywood too long. I was like, you've been in Hollywood. I was like, this is my father. It was crazy. It was crazy. And he was like, he was super embarrassed. Like that's what he immediately thought. But like, you know, I don't know why that's why his mind went there immediately, but that's why people think like, oh man, Hollywood's messed up.
It's a little weird.
It was weird. Nice guy afterwards. But it was
I love that you hit him with like the first name. No, Jim. Or
yeah. I said his name. I was like, you've been in Hollywood way too long. He got it. I can't tell you who it is. I'll tell you off air, but I can't tell you that. Yeah.
People are gonna be upset that they're blue balls on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not one roof, and it's not, you know, one set way of doing things, but also like people, the allure of like they're different than you, they're above you, they're in this separate universe. People want to tear that down, and I get that where it's taken advantage of for sure. You know, obviously you've seen these cases, but you mentioned the Epstein case. You know, did you cover a lot of that at Law and Crime?
I did. It was complicated, right? It was complicated because obviously you had her case, Ghislaine Maxwell's case. He died. And then it was civil litigation. It was like, what do we find out from the lawsuits that were filed against Ghislaine Maxwell and in the estate? And I got to tell you, when the Epstein files were released, none of it was a shocker. I mean, it wasn't bombshells. We knew a lot of this information from prior court filings. It was already out. What was interesting was some of it put a little more context. I think the address book was interesting, but remember, you might be listed in his address book, a contact, but it doesn't mean you were involved in alleged sex trafficking or anything like that. Okay. He was a guy who knew everybody.
He did.
He was a guy who was connected to so many different people. Now, these are people who were like, oh, shoot, I wish I wasn't in his contact book. Having said that, you do wonder who else knew exactly what was a part of it and who else partook in it. I mean, look, Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted of this, crimes related to the sex trafficking
to nobody.
To nobody. Now, it doesn't mean that she should be found not guilty. She should. But who else was involved in it? It's a fair question. And I don't know if we'll ever see any kind of movement on that,
We won't. There's too much. This 1,000 billion trillion %, you don't have to put it in a court of law. It is intelligence related. And so we will never, ever see. And this is what was so like sinisterly brilliant about them from like an intelligence perspective. All they had to do was take a picture with you. All they had to do.
Yeah.
Like, can we pull up? I pulled this up on podcast before. I know it's blank on me. We're talking about it, but can we pull up the picture of Elon Musk and Ghislaine Maxwell?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Elon technically, like that point that people usually don't ever loop him in with this, but like there's 0.01% of him that will always technically have to answer for this stupid fucking picture. If we pull up images right there, it's going to be the first one. Do the second one, actually, because that's better, because it's their full body. And you can literally see the body language here. This is at some event.
Yep.
and he's walking, I don't know, maybe towards the bar. I don't know what's on the other side. And a photographer who's paid to be at the event says, "Oh, Mr. Musk," and quickly stops. And he doesn't even turn all the way to the picture. But this little psycho bitch is right behind him and just leans in there like the creepy woman that she is. And now she's got him on picture.
Yeah. It's a good point. It's. By the way, if you go to that photo of Epstein with his hand over Ghislaine Maxwell, do you know they're selling the jacket? They're auctioning
the Epstein jacket.
They're auctioning it off.
They have it?
Yeah, they have it. They're auctioning it off. Somebody's going to buy that. Why? I have no idea. They're also auctioning off his address book too. It's like, why would you want that piece of memorabilia? But yeah, 100% agree. You create that photo, that's a contact. That's a contact. Look, when Harvey Weinstein was implicated, okay, even before the charges, like we had the New York Times piece, how many videos did you see of compilations where people are thanking Harvey, right? They're like, oh, thank you so much. This is my brother, thank you so much. It's like, doesn't mean they didn't know what was going on. I mean, they
did either.
Right. You don't know. You don't know what they knew, what they didn't know, but it showed his power, his influence, how much he helped people's careers. And obviously, the last thing they wanted from a PR point of view was to have to explain themselves. What did you know about Harvey Weinstein? Did you hear anything? I mean, that's not what they wanted. And that's what creates.
It doesn't. And that's the thing. Like, are there people who definitely knew? Yeah. Good luck figuring out which ones did and didn't, though. Like, how many of those people were in the casting rooms with him? How many of those people talked to someone who later whispered to them, a powerful person, hey, you know what Harvey did to me? The whole thing was these victims were afraid to tell anyone about it. Yeah. They're not running and telling Oprah about that. And it's like we make these people guilty of things. And again, like if they were and they did know something, and fucking fry them. I'm with you. But it just, it muddies the water. And to your point, like when you go through the Epstein Black Book, which I have a lot of fucking times, I always find something new in there. And it doesn't, like, for example, the guy had the contact of every preeminent contractor in the New York City area.
Yeah.
Because he liked real estate and had a lot of fucking houses and built shit and whatever the fuck it was.
Yeah.
Does that mean that these contractors were building like dungeons for him? No. Or that any of them, more than 3 of them actually worked for him?
Right.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
But then when I look at page 30 and I see Robert F. Kennedy and he's got fucking whatever it was, 11 to 13 contacts in there, including his now ex-deceased wife, her maid of honor, who also happens to be Carrie Cuomo, which is just like chef's kiss right there. But like when I see that, I'm like, I don't even have 11 contacts for my parents and grandparents put together. So, what he can tell me, well, we were out there doing a fossil expedition. That's why I went on the plane. But I don't am I really going to believe that?
The fact that you're asking those questions and legitimately asking those questions is the problem. And I think that was the headache that was Hollywood and politics for a while with everything that was going on with Epstein. When he was arrested, it was like, I say the same thing with Combs. Like when he was arrested, I did wonder, people, there's this lawyer who filed a bunch of lawsuits on behalf of alleged victims of Sean Combs. And he said that people were already contacting him to settle lawsuits before they were sued.
That's not Busby, is it?
It is.
It is?
So I was wondering, I was like, who are these high profile people that are reaching out to you to try to settle claims before you're named in a lawsuit? How many people, when Sean Combs was arrested, are like, oh, shoot. By the way, we don't know, and we may never know who the government spoke to in preparation of this case. They might have had interviews with celebrities that will not be called as witnesses at this case.
Why?
Because they have a fact-finding mission, right? So they might have had speak to people who will give them a piece of information that leads them then to a witness they do want to call, or that leads them to another piece of physical or digital evidence that might help their case, but doesn't mean they're going to call them. And so we don't know the scope of what was happening in the last, 2 years, year and a half of an investigation. We don't know. We might never know. But it does become a question. And when you see these high profile people who are, and by the way, it also is a point of, do they mention anything? As far as I know, Ashton Kutcher, who used to be good friends with Sean Combs, hasn't said anything about him since.
I don't think he has. No.
Okay, right? J-Lo hasn't said anything about him. You don't want to say anything about him. So it becomes a PR.
Ben Affleck did. He left her.
Yeah, well. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the circumstances were, but I will say it's basically like, it's a nightmare for them. It's a headache for them about how to respond to something like this.
Yeah, if you're a publicist right now in Hollywood, you are. and making a lot of money.
And I never believed the idea that, oh, Sean Combs is going to avoid criminal responsibility because he's going to name names. Oh, that was the. I was like, wait a minute, no. First of all, what they charged him with, he would never work out a deal where it didn't include significant prison time. He does not want to spend one day more in jail behind bars. Okay, so he's never going to agree to that. Number two, you just said he's the head of a criminal enterprise, a sex trafficking operation. Who else are you going to name that's bigger than him? He's the alleged head of the operation. I mean, so I never believed. Everybody's like, oh, he's going to name names. They were like, oh, his safety's in danger now. I was like, I don't believe it. I don't.
Here's why I think I might be with you on that.
Yeah.
Because he's a fucking moron. I mean, if there are brain cells up there, there's like 2 on a last chance power drive on the Boulevard of Broken Heroes. There was not a lot happening. This is a guy who was placed into his position when he was 23 with no chops, no understanding, and suddenly, immediately when he's placed as the head of this thing called Bad Boy Records, signs Notorious B.I.G. and is like the biggest, record label executive in Hollywood. That's what made his career. If he was put there, he was a useful idiot. And this is one place, like Epstein, horrible guy, but like if you really look at the case, you have to give him this as far as like what his abilities were outside the sick shit he did. He was a spy. He knew what he was doing. This was not an absolutely completely dumb guy or whatever. So Epstein, in my opinion, if you look at the case, it's pretty clear he knew where a lot of bodies were buried. Maybe not all of them, like people say, but he knew where a lot of them were up to the most powerful people. Diddy, I think he's probably used as more of a useful idiot on a not need to know basis. And so I don't think, and maybe I'm wrong, and I kind of hope I'm wrong about this if that is the case and he's a part of something bigger. Like, I don't even know if he would be able to name people or who's actually using him, because I think he's just a sick fuck that they probably took advantage of being a sick fuck and said, all right, go be a sick fuck now on our dime.
Well, the allegations put forward are that he has the tapes, right? He's got tapes of people that were specifically used and kept for a reason to exert his influence, exert intimidation. And you wonder what those tapes will be. And by the way, I do wonder if they're presented in a trial, like how much we'll know about them, right? There has to be, they're not just going to, I just don't imagine, I think there's going to have to be a protocol put in place that might have to be sealed where they're not just going to play it on a video screen no, that's not true. They'll have it here's what I think they're actually going to do. If I actually had to take a guess, this is what I think they're going to do. I think the jurors are going to have video screens in front of them with headphones and are going to watch it, and nobody in the courtroom else is going to see it. And then afterwards, a witness will be questioned about it in front of the jury, but I don't think any of us will ever know what those videos are, or the details of that videos, or ever see those videos.
Well, that is the thing. Like when I'm saying the people he would name, I'm going off what you're saying as far as like the actual operation of sex trafficking. But to your point, the people who might have like, I don't know, like enjoyed these sick activities, absolutely will involve some extremely famous people that could be. Maybe that could be a bargaining chip.
No, I don't see it. I think because there would be no deal that he would have taken, and I don't think I will tell you this much. I do find it very interesting that we are, what is it, May? Oh, it's April 5th. Okay. So we're a month away from the trial. Okay. He's charged with racketeering conspiracy, which means you are in agreement with others to further a illegitimate criminal enterprise, and sex trafficking, and he's the only one charged in this case.
Yeah.
Crazy. So it makes me wonder, are there going to be people who testify who will be questioned by his defense counsel? Did you work out a deal? Did you get immunity to testify? I mean, who are his co-conspirators? Who are they? The assistants, the managers? I don't know. I don't know who they are. And that's the same concern that we had with the Ghislaine Maxwell case.
Yes, trafficking and nobody.
Yeah.
In that scenario, though, that's crazy. That scenario.
Who's he in agreement with? Who's the conspiracy with? Usually you have a conspiracy and they're all charged together, right? You know what it is.
Yeah.
There's a conspiracy. The brothers, I think the Alexander brothers are charged with conspiracy. Conspiracy together.
The real estate guys.
Yeah, the brothers. Yeah. Makes sense. You have to have an agreement between one or more people. And there has to be overt steps taken in furtherance of that agreement. Okay. What would he just agree with himself? I mean, who are the people? Now, the problem with this federal case, and I've been following almost every filing, is we do not know what the evidence is. The defense does, but we don't, because all of it's been sealed. And if any filings you see, half of it's redacted. It's all blacked out. I don't know what the evidence is. I don't know what the case is. We are going to see on May, and then we'll have a much clearer picture of the angle of their case, who they plan to call. I believe, again,
You've read the indictment, right?
Oh, I've read all three, and I've read all the filings. But I would say I'm fairly confident that victim one in the case is Cassandra Ventura. I think they just announced yesterday that victim one is going to identify herself. So
we're going to find out.
Cassandra Ventura would identify. I don't know about the prosecutors are trying to have victims 2 through 4 not identify themselves. So they would testify as Jane Doe number 1, Jane Doe number 2. We'll see if the court agrees. But at the very least, we'll know who victim 1 is.
And you said there's 3 indictments. Are those in separate jurisdictions?
They're just they amend the charges. It was interesting because you had the first indictment, then you had the second indictment, which clarified some of the language, and now this third one that has added 2 charges, and they're all respect to victim 2 in this case. We don't know who victim 2 is, but it regards conduct from 2021 through 2024, which is interesting because if that timeline is accurate, then that is after Sean Combs was initially hit with that lawsuit from Cassandra Ventura back in 2023. Yes. So he allegedly engaged in illegal behavior even through 2024 through his arrest. Now, we don't know who victim 2 is, but the new charges are sex trafficking of victim 2 and transportation to engage in prostitution with victim 2. And it'll be interesting to see who this person is, although, again, we might not know.
You had talked about this earlier with, like, it could just be he's a part of these. Technically, if you're the defense, you could say, well, these are consensual legal freak-offs or whatever.
That's the best defense.
Do we know any of the evidence yet of the transportation aspect of it? Because that would mean if I'm incorrect here, please correct me, but that would mean you are, in this case, as Sean Diddy Combs, planning to have other people picked up, probably against their will, and in some way, via plane or bus or fucking car, whatever it is, transported to where you're going to be and use them in ways that are against their will.
Based on the filings that I've seen, it seems that it would be hotel receipts, like hotel invoices, probably travel records, either by private plane, maybe car. And that becomes important, particularly with, I think it's fair to say, that commercial sex workers will testify about what they saw and what they heard and how they were transported from A to B. What was that kind of process? Who gave them the money? How did it work? So I think it's definitely going to be a case built on documentary evidence. It's going to be based on those receipts and to what extent they exist. But I think that those are things that prosecutors, even in their initial filings, have talked about. Yeah.
And this starts next month?
Starts next month. It's crazy. Oh, wow. This case, I didn't think was going to start this soon. Like, he got arrested in September of 2024. Now trial in May. Doesn't usually happen that way, especially for a federal case. But he is of the opinion that he doesn't want to spend one more day in jail. There is an argument that he has been putting the fire to the feet of the prosecutors, basically saying, I want to go to trial as soon as possible. Okay, I don't want to spend one more day. He may think he really has a legitimate shot to be found not guilty, and he can move forward. Because look, from a state point of view,
move forward.
If he's acquitted, right? If he's acquitted, he's not facing criminal charges in another jurisdiction. There's statute of limitations issues. If there were potential state charges in New York or other places, those claims might be too old. They might be time barred. For example, the Cassandra Ventura 2016 tape, they can't bring him up on, I don't know if it's assault or battery in California, but they can't bring him on those charges. The claim's too old.
Long ago.
It's too old. So his next battle will be all the civil cases and trying to fight that. If he, but he wants to get out of there. He, by the way, I haven't mentioned this yet. I think that the reason he surrendered himself in New York before he was arrested, the reason he never skipped town, surrendered his passport, I believe he legitimately believed, in my opinion, that he was going to make bail, that he was going to be let out. And if that was the case, he probably wouldn't want to go to trial right now. He probably, let's push this trial out as long as possible. I'll be on house arrest, whatever. But because he was denied bail, and I think was shocked that he was denied bail, he was like, I got to get out of here. Let's go to trial as soon as possible.
Yeah, he's a narcissistic fuck. He thinks that the whole world operates around him, and But that takes an extra level of complete lack of self-awareness, thinking that.
Well, no. From a legal point of view, he wouldn't be the only person accused of sex trafficking who could be let out on bail. There was the guy who headed up Abercrombie and Fitch.
Yes,
Mike Jeffries. He was let out. I mean, he was out on bail. And look, he's older. He's not accused of racketeering.
This is Diddy, though.
Yeah, and look, he's facing more serious charges and more extensive charges. So, but he thought that he could make an argument. I'm cooperative. I'll always show up. You don't have to worry. But there was an element of danger. There was an element that he was a flight risk, and there was evidence that he was intimidating witnesses and alleged victims in this case. Yeah.
What's the evidence of that?
Oh, so there was evidence that as this was coming out, he reached out to a potential witness, probably in this case, to kind of, color her testimony. There was evidence that while he's been in the Metropolitan Detention Center, the MDC out in Brooklyn, he has been reaching out to or using like third-party channels to reach out to witnesses or have people reach out to these witnesses. And so when that evidence was presented, they're like, this guy, imagine he's out. And he actually did something interesting. He put forward a bail package where he was going to hire a private security firm to watch his every movements. There was an argument. Can we trust them? You're hiring them. You're paying them. But it didn't work. And the judge, he kept every court he went to denied him bail, and he gave up the fight.
Do you think that it is going to be more of an advantage to him or disadvantage to him that he's pushing for the trial to be so fast? Like, do you think it's harder for the prosecution to make this case or for him to defend it?
So the idea is you try to rush the prosecution because you feel like they're not ready. And okay. The other way of looking at it is, no, the prosecutors are ready. Are you going to be ready? I mean, he was just hit with a superseding indictment yesterday. Is he going to be ready in a month?
What's the new one say?
It's the same stuff, but now he's hit with 2 more charges with regard to a victim 2. So sex trafficking of victim 2. It's actually interesting. Sex trafficking of victim 2 and transportation to engage in prostitution of victim 2. But there's also a change in the language a little bit. There was I don't know why they did this. The prosecutors made it clear that if he was brandishing a weapon, it was towards a female victim, and that he held a female victim over a balcony. I believe they just added the word female. And I was like, why they feel that need of specificity going into us. I mean, I guess, I don't know.
He had interesting taste.
Yeah. So they made a couple of changes. I don't think it's really going to change the case per se so much for them. But in a normal case, if he was out on bail, if he was out right now, his lawyers would say, they just hit us with a new indictment. We need more time to work on this, but not here. They want to go to trial.
Now, you're also working at News Nation now, right?
Yeah. I'm their legal contributor. So I actually work with Chris Cuomo. So yeah, I heard you mention Cuomo. I'm a huge fan. Chris is a great guy, a friend of mine. I love him.
Is he a good guy off camera?
Great guy. I didn't know too much about Chris Cuomo. Like I followed him in the media, never met him. And then when I got a chance to meet him, he's super nice, humble guy and smart. I love the guy.
Yeah, it's interesting because he was in the middle of that whole pandemic, CNN versus Fox News kind of thing, and now he's with News Nation, which is much more. I like News Nation. It's very
great.
Down the middle, and
I love that.
It's as close as it comes to that. I think.
So I'll give you inside baseball. Sometimes when you're a media contributor, a legal contributor, they ask you to take a side. Can you argue this side? I remember once I was asked by a very big network, "Can I take this position?" And it was like against everything I ever believe in. I was like, "No, I won't." This one, what do you think? I'm never asked. I'm never asked take this side.
Yeah.
Unless it's like a fun legal segment, like you're going to play the part of the prosecution, you'll play the part of the defense. But no, and then I anchor for them as well. So I filled in for Chris. I filled in for Dan Abrams.
Oh wow!
I filled in for all their talent.
How long you been there now? 2-3 months?
No, am I my 3rd year?
Shit, you're that far in?
Yeah. Oh, I joined in 2023. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought this was a newer thing.
Oh, no. I've been with them for like 2 years. Yeah, 2 years. So it's
shit.
Good. Yeah.
So you got Serious, you got Law and Crime.
News Nation.
You fill in as an
Mediaite,
anchor.
Yeah, and then Always in Fashion with my dad. So I'm constantly busy.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
full agenda.
Yeah, I know my friend Nishan over there.
He's great.
Yeah,
Love that guy.
Good guy. He's working with Chris. I haven't asked him about it.
He's great.
He's
a good guy. Yeah. He does all the shoots with him. Yeah. So my schedule's like insane. I wake up every day at 5 and I'm working at 5:15 and I don't finish till like 10, 11. It's my wife is very understanding. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, you're a hard worker. We're doing this on a Saturday.
Yeah.
But didn't Diddy file a lawsuit against the whole network?
He did.
It's like a $50 million lawsuit?
I'm not at liberty to talk more about it, but
I figured.
he did file a lawsuit.
So you have, like, not referring to this right now or discussing that, but when you're on News Nation,
Yep.
does that affect your ability to even like cover it?
No, I'm again just give my opinion about what's happening.
That's
Although,
good.
yeah, no, I can't comment more on it. But yeah, he did that. It was interesting because he's he's trying to fight back. He's been very adamant that he believes all these allegations are false. I mean, the one thing that he did admit, which so interesting. He comes out 2 days after that video of him beating Cassandra Ventura was posted, and he comes out on Instagram and says, I was messed up.
So bad.
He thought, I don't know him, but I imagine he knew he couldn't be criminally charged with that in California. But that is an admission that it was you, and that can be used against you at the federal level, which I don't understand why he said it. I don't quite understand it, because it's not like he made that admission. Everybody's like, it's okay, Diddy.
I think he actually thought he might get that. He might get sympathy. He's that psycho.
This isn't him yelling at a person at a restaurant because they didn't have his table. This was a savage beating. It was one of the most difficult things I've seen on tape.
Yes.
And again, I go back to the idea of, I don't know what else they have. I don't know what other videos they have. But that's one thing. And by the way, okay, I have to say it. Allegedly, it's him. Okay, allegedly. It's him. But put it this way. If he did that in an open hotel room, maybe he was on drugs, whatever, but in an open hotel room wearing a towel and beating her up and dragging her, what else was behind closed doors?
What I'm saying.
I mean, it's crazy to think about.
I don't see how, obviously that's going to get played in court for jurors, and I don't see how that's not going to emotionally anchor people. Even though they're not supposed to be, they're supposed to look at everything on an individual basis. That's one of the nastiest videos you'll ever see.
But it does two things, right? So it does two things. If Cassandra Ventura is victim one, then number one, it would be used as evidence of sex trafficking. She was trying to run. But number two, it makes her credible. It makes her credible. I said this happened, and now I have the video proof. Okay? I said this happened. What do the text messages say? Now.
Hey guys, if you haven't already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. It's a huge, huge help. Thank you.
Things that can get muddy the water. If there are messages where she's agreeing to be a part of these freak offs and she doesn't show any kind of resistance toward it, or she's encouraging it, that becomes a problem, right? It's all about raising any kind of reasonable doubt in the minds of the jurors. Did he commit racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking, prostitution charges? Did he commit the beyond a reasonable doubt? If they can muddy the waters and make it, we talked about before, black, white, gray, if they can make it a gray case, that's how he wins.
And we're also not going to see it because it's in closed court.
But it'll be as much reporting. There's going to be a transcript that's released. At Long Crime, we're actually going to do live coverage as much as we can. We'll get live updates about what's happening in court. We have a reporter in the courtroom.
It's not going to be you?
No, we have a reporter that I'm going to be anchoring. So we'll have a reporter in the courtroom. She'll come out, do a lunchtime show with us. We're going to do live updates about what's happening. We are also going to get the transcript. So the transcript's going to come out the next day. We can probably do like sidebar episodes about that as well. And like, what happened in court. What's your prediction there? I don't want to make a prediction yet until I know more about the evidence. It's not like I can look, again, the Koberger case, when we know so much out there and I can make a good prediction there. This one, it's tough to say because I think it's a unique way they're charging sex trafficking and racketeering, and I want to see how they argue it. But, there is a part of me that feels if there is, you have witnesses who are talking about being abused and you have that video being played, he's looking potentially at a tough case. Yeah. And potentially life in prison. Yeah. And how long do you think a trial like this is going to take? So I think jury selection is going to be a minute. It's going to take a second to try to get a jury. Probably into early summer, probably like July, I would say. So like not like 6 months, but like 2 months. Maybe like 6 weeks, 7 weeks, maybe 8 weeks. Yeah. It's going to be interesting. Yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting case. A lot of eyeballs on it. And, it's an important one. It's an important one. He's a very, very high profile figure. You talked about how there's always been like rumors and stuff. It's going to be a difficult one to sit through and hear. And, trying to understand what happened, but it's so much in the secrets right now. It's so much in the shadows that it's hard to know what to make of it.
If they don't prove it, I will be. And again, we haven't seen like all the hardcore evidence they're going to bring, but I will be shocked because, I mean, I'm a fucking regular dude, and I'm telling you, I will never forget. I had a conversation with someone over 2 years ago where they described everything to a T. That is exactly what came out.
Really,
and they are not like a very famous person. And then I had another conversation with someone who would know about 8 years ago that at the time went right over my head. And now when I look back on it and what he said, I was like, oh.
Let me ask you a question. Did the person say that they were doing it against their will?
So the one 2 years ago that I was talking about? Yeah. Some of it, yes. Some of it, no.
Okay. So that
was the allegation.
That's interesting, right? And that muddies the waters a little bit about it. Were they scared?
So the person talking about this was not someone who had it happen to them.
Oh, it was somebody.
But they were around. They were around people.
Oh, I see.
Who I believe had.
Okay, so and then it becomes a question of, I think it's like, was this a romantic interest? He flew out, gave gifts to, promised career opportunities. Is that somebody who's morally despicable, or is that, sex trafficking? It's a weird definition of it. And look, this case is going to be a bit expansive too, because for the racketeering conspiracy case, you have to prove underlying crimes. Like, if you have a criminal enterprise, what are those crimes?
Right.
So that it's kidnapping, arson. There's one of the allegations in Cassandra Ventura's lawsuit that I think is going to make its way here, that he blew up Kid Cudi's car.
Oh, yeah, I heard about this.
He blew up Kid Cudi's car, allegedly, because he was, romantic interest of Cassandra Ventura. That's a underlying crime to show. They have to show that he was doing all this kind of, and what was the idea? It was all to benefit Diddy, benefit his businesses. So it's going to be a little bit of a confusing case. I'm sure there's going to be testimony. You're like, what is that? How does that relate to any of this? But it's, they've charged him in a creative way, and there's going to be, arguments to support one way or another. There's talk, would he take the stand? In a case like this, he shouldn't. Let me be clear. He shouldn't take the stand. The only time I think a defendant really should take the stand, and it's their choice, is a self-defense case. You have to explain to the jurors why you felt the need to use deadly force. But this is a guy who took the stand in his other trial back in 1999 or 2000. Remember that? Worked out well. He was acquitted. So I wonder
he didn't have the spotlight on him that he does this
and he doesn't have the same allegations.
I mean, he was a famous guy, but it was a totally different.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to play the game too, though, with the what they can prove is consensual is not, though, it gets dangerous because you can start to say the same things about Weinstein, right? Because hypothetically, obviously I think it's very clear what the guy did, but he could say they came over to his hotel room and he just insinuated like, hey, I have the power to put you in this movie. And they consensually said, well, let me put you over the top, which is not how I believe it went down. But you see what I mean?
So the counter argument to that is, yeah, I 100% agree. There could be, I think you speak to every 5-10 people on the street, they would say, yeah, they knew what they were doing. But our understanding of sexual assault and misconduct has changed dramatically. There are people who are sexually assaulted and they stay in touch with the people who abuse them. They might say they love them. There are a lot of complicated psychological and emotional factors that go into this, and it doesn't mean that they're not credible. It may complicate the story, but it's understandable. There's a lot that goes into this, and there might be people who feel it looked like everything was consensual. There are people who rape their girlfriends. There are people, it happens. And you said it before, like one thing can be true, another one can be true at the same time. It's going to be very fact specific, but I would say one of the reasons that I think Weinstein was convicted is because if that case happened 20 years before, where someone's like, they knew what was going on, but our whole understanding of it, and particularly from the Me Too movement and hearing the testimony, by the way, it's different from me explaining versus actually hearing the testimony from people. Yes, they're cross-examined. Oh, yeah. They're cross-examined. They should be, but it's different, and it'll be up to that jury. Trying to find a jury, though, it'll be tough. I think, because this case is like,
it's gonna be a shit show.
Everybody knows about this case.
Oh yeah,
but do they know the specifics of it? Do they know exactly what the charges are? We'll see.
We will. Now, you've also been looking at this JFK stuff?
Yeah.
You were telling me before?
Yeah.
This is a throwback, but it's so much fun. I've done great podcasts in the past with guys who just know all about this. So our mutual friend, by the way, put this together, Joseph Scott Morgan.
Love him.
Came in here.
Love him.
I had done 146 with him, but then he came in for 170 and 171, and we did
Which one's this
the
one?
whole. This is going to be 290 something.
Okay.
But, we did like the whole JFK case from like the how the evidence was taken from the beginning to the end. It was really incredible stuff. But like, now these files come out and it still feels like there's a lot we don't know.
Yeah. Look, you have to think about it like this. I didn't know too much about JFK before, and I've spoken to experts about it. Where does it come from? It comes from like the Warren Commission. First of all, it's so not organized, right? It's so not organized. There was no like analog, there was no like index. It was all over the place trying to understand. What I think the conclusion is from the people I've spoken to is Oswald was the shooter, but it seems to me that the CIA, at the very least, failed to do what they needed to do to watch him and to properly. And it does become a question about why that happened. They were tracking him. They knew his movements, but I can't say from the documents that have been released and analyzed and from the people that I've spoken to that say that the CIA was, a part of the assassination or they were complicit in it, but there was a failure. And what I do think is interesting as well is there are nuggets in there, like, the George Underhill one, right? The guy that said the CIA was behind it, and then he dies 6 months later.
There's a lot of people like that.
And it's only going to amplify the conversation. I know that there were people who testified on Capitol Hill recently who say they want a further investigation into it. There's the truth. It's going to take years to properly understand everything. Because, by the way, it's not like we haven't seen these documents. The big thing is there was a lot of documents that are now unredacted that were previously released. So I think it's going to take years for people to understand and put into context a lot of what was released. And I'm not sure if anything else is going to be released in addition to that. But I got to give it to the Trump administration for doing this and for releasing it and providing a point of transparency. The conversation will continue. And like we said before, it doesn't matter what was released. People will still have their opinions one way or another. It doesn't matter what the verdict is. People will still have their opinions.
Well, we've got, when you look at the ballistics and everything, one thing that's always been clear is that if Oswald was a shooter, and I actually think he probably did fire shots, he wasn't the only one. And we've now had congressmen and women come out and say they've been told that as well. So there's at least something there. But, if you go through some of the guys who really had dug into this case in the past and did it from just a hard evidence perspective, to me, one of the guys that puts together this whole picture the best was the dude, David Talbot. He wrote a book called Devil's Chessboard. You ever read that?
No, but I've heard of him. Yeah.
Oh, my God, man. It's insane because, a lot of people wanted this guy dead.
Yeah.
And a lot of those people happen to be in our government. And there were a lot of reasons for it. If you talk to any of the Cuban-related guys who were within our government and services from the time today who are still alive, they will tell you straight up, oh, he was a traitor. They will use language like this, no questions asked. And it's not just because of what they feel like the Bay of Pigs was and all that and him pulling back, which I think there's a lot more of that story, just my opinion. But, it's also because allegedly he was talking with Khrushchev about denuclearizing. And the two of them were having an open conversation about it. And that was the bridge too far. That's where intelligence said, fuck that. We're not taking away any of our nukes or anything like that. We reserve the right to have to bomb the Soviets. Because at the time, this is just, and you wonder how much of this still exists mentality-wise within the government. But this is a time where people within the government openly thought of things in the following way. They looked at it well, if the Soviets nuked us, we would lose 60 million, but when we nuke them back, they would lose 240. So we win by 180.
Yeah.
Instead of the world lost 300 and we lost 60.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which then you think about it and you're the people that think like that, it's then far-fetched to say they would have taken out a president. Of course it's not.
And I think there was evidence in there that, there was a conflict between JFK. There's some tension between JFK and the CIA. I thought it was interesting, Fidel Castro was quite concerned after the death of JFK, right? He was like, now we're dealing with Johnson, and I don't know what this is about. And there was an unpredictable nature about it because there was always, was he some sort of was part of it as well? I thought the most interesting thing was the CIA operations, right? Just understanding these efforts to poison the sugar supply, right? I think it was of Cuba, or no, maybe it was the Dominican Republic. Now I don't remember, but it was like these ideas, these covert actions in different countries, and just I thought that commentary and those memos were the most fascinating part of it because you wonder, wow, this is what they were up to, but what are they up to now? It didn't stop. It didn't stop. It didn't stop in the 60s, in my opinion. So I don't have proof of that, but that was my interpretation of it.
Yeah, I think about this a lot. That's why I like to put these guys on camera. Just get the testimony, everyone out there can hear it, and you wonder what they hold back. But I was telling you before, I had a guy, Matt Hedger, sitting there recently for a couple different podcasts, and he was a knock, and he's very forthcoming about what that entailed and what that was and what he thinks was good about that. But it's a moral quandary. Because a week after I had him sitting there the second time, I had Ed Calderon sitting in that chair who's, been battling the cartels for decades. And Ed Calderon brings up, or we can talk about the CIA fucking flipping major banks to get them to fund the cartels. And I'm like, just had the guy sitting there who told a story about how he did that.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, what's the bigger national security implication that makes you do that? It better be good.
Yeah.
But who are you to decide that in a way? Like you're talking about organizations that murder people like crazy and infect our streets with drugs in this case. And when you look at some of the examples you're given, it's like, all right, the CIA wants to overturn this government. How many people are they going to kill to do that?
Don't you remember what President Trump said? I think it was in his first term. It was like talking about maybe it was about Russia. And he was like, oh, he's a killer. He goes, we got killers here. Or we've killed people. Remember that?
We got killers too.
Yeah. It was, but no, it's the truth. And I again, I don't think it was every administration that would release this information in this way. And yes, it was a haphazard release. There was things that were released quite quickly. And by the way, there's more Epstein files I think that they have to release as well.
They didn't to your point, they didn't release anything the first time around. Those binders, that was a photo op.
And the idea that the FBI withheld it from Pam Bondi,
not that guy's call. That guy got fired. It's not his call.
I don't know if he stepped down because out of principle. I don't remember.
He was told.
But I think he also had another beef with the administration as well.
Yeah, he was told to resign, I believe.
Yeah, so it's I give it credit, but it doesn't solve a lot of people's questions that they have about it. But it's fascinating. It's fascinating. I mean, it's one of those things that it's. So we did a sidebar episode on JFK. It was my idea. I was like, we don't usually do this. Let's do it. Maybe there's interest. Made 2 million views in the first 24 hours.
Yeah.
People were just eating it up. They still have. It's one of those cases. It's one of those situations. People still want to know what's going on.
He was a sitting U.S. president. Yeah. He had his head blown off in public.
So what happened with the Trump assassination?
Great question.
We don't talk about that anymore.
Talk about that
we don't talk about the attempted assassination. I mean, where's the document release on that? I mean, isn't it amazing, this news cycle? I mean, first it was, by the way, it's funny. The drones in New Jersey, was they here?
Yeah.
Well, you saw them?
Yeah, I saw a few.
Yeah, okay. Where's that story?
Gone.
Yeah, don't worry about it. What'd they say?
I know why that one's gone.
Well, you're not going to say? Okay. All right. Well, it was funny. The Trump administration basically was it was, I forgot what they say was. Was it weather related? I don't remember. But anyway.
Yeah, it's some bullshit excuse.
Yeah. I have my own theories too on that. But yeah, that story went away. Attempted assassination goes away. The news cycle changes every second. It changes every second. And that's why I think it's important, certain stories that they stay in the media and they stay in the public conscious. There's just too much to consume though that it's hard to get people to focus.
Yeah, the tough one with JFK, and this is just a reality, is that you do have to live in a country where you have intelligence services, right?
Yep.
And it has been proven that our intelligence services have done some awful things over the years. You wonder what the reasoning for some of that was, and then other ones, it's just that's just awful. There's no reason for that. But if it came out, as I believe it was, that they had just a few people involved in it, which is what it was. This is an organization of whatever it is, 30, 50,000 people. Most of the people had no idea the fucking guy was going to get killed. Right? But the 3-5 people that did, and then the 3-5 people at the Pentagon that did, they speak for the whole brand. And even though it's 60 some years ago, if that comes out definitively today, like, yes, Alan Dulles ordered it and Curtis LeMay signed off on it in the Pentagon, the anti-establishment of the streets is going to say, burn it all down.
Yeah, of course.
And overnight, you got a problem.
Bad apples, right? Same thing, bad apples. By the way, I don't know if I would even want to know everything the CIA or FBI are doing on a daily basis. I don't know. I don't think I would want to know. You really want that in your head? Think about what they have to deal with day in and day out.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people in Tracy Walder, former FBI, CIA agent, News Nation contributor. She's fantastic. I always think about what she had to deal with on a day-to-day basis and what she knew. Bringing that home, can't tell your family probably what's going on. I don't want to know. Just there's a part of me like, yes, I love transparency. There's part of me like, just don't tell me what's going on. Just take care of the job.
You can't undownload that hard drive.
Yeah.
And you know, some guys I've had in here who are from those worlds. That's one place where I have had a lot of empathy with them. Like Matthew Hedger talked about it. He had to be taken into a warehouse with a bunch of senior level cartel people while a guy was tied up next to a table crying and screaming, and on the table was his 10-year-old son, and they were all taking a carrot peeler to his face because the guy had stolen money, and Matthew had to sit there and watch it and not do anything. And you can tell, like, that affects him a lot. And who wouldn't it? I'm glad it affects him because it means he's a real fucking human being.
Yeah.
But, like, you know, that's why I could never do these jobs. It's a difficult thing.
It's you have to be a very specific personality. You have to have a certain skill set, a certain talent for it, but it is incredibly. By the way, it's interesting. When I was practicing law, when I was in law school, I didn't know if I was going to practice or what I was going to do, but I was like, do I want to be a criminal defense attorney? I was like, I don't want to be around that content all the time.
That's what my dad said.
Yeah, I don't want to be around it. It's one thing to cover it, but you know, we have that show Prime Crime, and it's a documentary show, and we get all the raw footage, so the raw crime scene photos, to go through that, to blur it out. It's like that would be your day in and day out as a criminal defense attorney. I was like, that's not the kind of life I wanted. You know? It's tough subject matter to say the least.
Yeah, and like we were saying with Brian McMonagle, it's like you are going to statistically have to represent people who are guilty of heinous things. And he even said, he's like, listen, if someone's a terrorist or something, find another lawyer. He's like, I know I'm not supposed to say that, but like with me, there's even some line there.
Morally, you have to do what you have to do. I mean, you can't cross that line. And look, I give it credit to people who represent the worst of the worst. They don't want to do it, but they know that's their job, and they have to just look at the rights of the person. Yes. And it's again easier said than done, because I remember one of the craziest court moments I ever saw was when Larry Nassar, who's the guy that abused all of those women and girls, you know, the father running and chasing him and almost trying to, you know, jumping over the table to grab him. His lawyers like became pariahs, and like they're just doing their job.
They're doing their job,
and it's like not easy when you're representing a guy like that. I mean, it was like hundreds of people testifying about how he abused them. It's like they got to represent this guy.
But again, they're doing, like you said, they're doing their job, and they're also upholding the Constitution. Like that is what it's about.
That's what it is.
And then justice was done there. The guy was righteously found guilty, and you hope that that's how it works out. Usually.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Fucking couldn't be me though.
No, not at all.
But listen, I told you I'd get you out of here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Got a thing. We could keep going, but we're gonna have to do this again at some point.
I would love to.
Your breakdown's amazing.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me. It was such a pleasure, and congratulations on your success.
Thank you so much. But we will also be sticking your links down there so that people can enjoy your success as well.
Good. Love it. Thank you so much.
So you're on Law and Crime. You got just list off all your shows again.
So I got Sidebar and Prime Crime on Law and Crime. I have News Nation. I'm their legal contributor, always in fashion with my dad. And then I have a show called The Spin Room that's on Mediaite. So I hope everybody can check it out.
All right. Check my links when we put this out, but we'll have all those in there. Everyone go check out the great Jesse's work. And thank you again.
You got it. Thank you.
All right. Everybody else, you know what it is. Give it a thought. Get back to me. Peace. Thank you guys for watching the episode. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and smash that like button on the video. They're both a huge, huge help. And if you would like to follow me on Instagram and X, those links are in my description below.